Chapter 378. The sect master of the Tianjian sect, Gao Yu, stood in the Sky Pillar Hall and angrily complained about the Sky Pillar sect's crimes. He talked non-stop, starting from 100 years ago, all the way to his birthday banquet last month. Under his description, the Sky Pillar sect had completely turned into a tyrannical and arrogant evil sect that committed all kinds of crimes. Perhaps he was acting, or perhaps he was truly sad. When he talked about how Shi Wenyu was killed, how he was injured by Chu Tiansheng, and how the divine sword peak was destroyed, he was still weeping. His tragic tone and cries could really move anyone who heard it and shed tears upon seeing it. When the sect masters and elders in the hall saw Gao Yu's appearance, their expressions became very complicated and many thoughts appeared in their minds. Granny Shui Yu looked at him coldly and sneered in her heart, "Gao Yu, this shameless guy, he's really not afraid of losing face. In front of the sect masters and the emperor, he can actually act so miserably and realistically. It seems that he's already shameless in order to complain about the Sky Pillar sect." Sect Master Yen and Sect Master Qi also looked at Gao Yu with strange expressions. Their eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. This Gao Yu really doesn't care about his status and face. He's completely shameless. This guy can really act. He actually inverted right and wrong to falsely accuse the Sky Pillar sect. I hope the emperor won't be deceived by him. On the right side of the hall, the Thousand Autumns sect master, the True Martial sect master, and the Wind Fire sect master snickered in their hearts and agreed with Gao Yu's actions. In the hearts of the three sect masters, all kinds of thoughts appeared. Chu Tiansheng must be stupid, right? He definitely didn't think that Gao Yu would directly complain in front of the emperor, right? Chu Tiansheng, with the emperor present, let's see how you explain this time. The emperor doesn't know the inside story and will definitely be deceived by Gao Yu in this situation. Even if it's to appease Gao Yu, he will definitely blame or severely punish the Sky Pillar sect. Chu Tiansheng's expression was naturally gloomy. His eyes were cold from the shameless Gao Yu and his hands were trembling. However, the emperor was sitting in the main seat and listening to Gao Yu's complaints expressionlessly. He couldn't rashly stand up to defend himself. In that case, if he quarreled with Gao Yi in public, not only would he not be able to clear his name, but it would also have the opposite effect. He did his best to suppress his anger, but a cold smile hung on his lips as he glared at Gao Yi, watching Gao Yi's performance. Finally, after a quarter of an hour, Gao Yi finished speaking. He waved his sleeves to wipe away the tears on his face, bowed deeply to the emperor, and begged, "Your Majesty, you must seek justice for me." The Thousand Autumns sect leader, the True Martial sect leader, and the Wind and Fire sect leader exchanged glances and hurriedly stood up to salute the emperor. They cupped their fists and said, "Your Majesty the Emperor, everything that sect leader Gao said just now is true. We are willing to testify for him." Tianzi had been silently listening to Gao Yi's words. There was no change in his expression on his handsome face. Seeing the three sect leaders step forward to testify for Gao Yi, an imperceptible light flashed in his eyes. He nodded lightly and said calmly, "Sect masters, please take your seats." Although sect leader Gao's experience makes one sigh, I am new here and am not clear about the grudges between the sects in the Tianshan region. This monarch cannot make any conclusions about this matter based on your one-sided statement. However, sect leader Gao, don't worry. I will investigate this matter as soon as possible and give you an answer. Tianzi's words and attitude were neutral. He wasn't deceived or influenced by Gao Yi at all. This made Gao Yi, the Thousand Autumns sect leader, and the others feel a little disappointed. However, they had already expected this result. They also guessed that Tianzi, as the #1 genius of the human race, was a wise person and wouldn't easily believe the words of others. However, Gao Yi put on a pitiful expression and took the initiative to complain to Tianzi. No matter what, this would create a preconceived notion in Tianzi's mind. The Sky Pillar sect was strong and domineering, while the Tianjin sect was weak and pitiful, being bullied by the Sky Pillar sect. Thus, Gao Yi's goal was achieved. Immediately after, Tianzi turned to look at Chu Tianxing and expressionlessly asked, "Sect Master Chu, do you have anything to say about what Sect Master Gao just said?" Chu Tianxing immediately stood up and walked to the center of the hall. He said in a deep voice, "Reporting to your majesty, Tianzi, what Gao Yi said was nonsense." He inverted black and white, confusing right and wrong, since Gao Yi had shamelessly made a scene in front of everyone and slandered the Sky Pillar sect in front of everyone in the hall. Tianzi didn't dare to offend the Sky Pillar sect. Of course, Chu Tianxing wouldn't give the Tianjin sect any face. He mercilessly refuted Gao Yi's words and used extremely sharp words to denounce Gao Yi for being sinister and despicable. He refuted and explained everything that Gao Yi had said to Nye Tian. After a full half an hour, he finished explaining everything. Granny Shuiyu, sect leader Yan, and sect leader Qi all stood up and bowed to Tianzi, confirming that Chu Tianxing's words were true. Gao Yi sat on the right without saying a word. His face was also livid with anger, and his eyes were filled with anger as he stared at Chu Tianxing. Tianzi nodded expressionlessly and said calmly, "Sect leader Chu, please take a seat." The two sect leaders have different opinions about the same thing. They both have their own grievances and difficulties. It seems that the conflict between the two sects has been brewing for a long time. The grievances have accumulated over time and can no longer be easily resolved. In that case, please don't be impatient and wait patiently for a few days. After this emperor investigates clearly, I will naturally make a decision. At that time, this emperor will distinguish between right and wrong for the two sect leaders. Since Tianzi had spoken, Chu Tianxing and Gao Yi couldn't say anything more. Naturally, they nodded in agreement. Next, Tianzi looked at the other sect leaders and asked if there were any grievances between the sects that were difficult to resolve. The sect leaders were silent and hesitant. No one took the initiative to speak, and no one stood up to complain. After all, the two strongest forces in the Tianjin region were the Sky-bearing sect and the Tianjin sect. The grievances between the two sects had developed to the point where they couldn't tolerate each other and were about to go to war. This time, Tianzi came to the Tianjin region mainly to resolve the grievances between the two sects and stabilize the overall situation. Although there were some grievances between the other 6 sects, they were all small frictions and conflicts. In this kind of situation, no one was willing to talk about those small matters. It would only make people laugh and might not be able to resolve it effectively. Seeing that everyone was silent, Tianzi didn't ask anything and said in a solemn tone, "Since the 6 sects are still harmonious, then this emperor is relieved. Next, this emperor will stay in the Sky-bearing sect for a while to thoroughly investigate and resolve the grievances between the two sects. Sect leaders, please stay in the Sky-bearing sect for a few days to help this emperor understand the situation and contribute to the peace and stability of the Tianjin region." Chapter 379. After the meeting ended, the sect leaders led their elders and chief disciples out of the towering sky hall. Everyone left the red firmament peak and returned to the courtyards on the mountainside of the towering sky peak to rest. In the towering sky hall, only Tianzi, the imperial general, Chu Tianxing, Ji Tianxing, and Yunyao were left. Tianzi's gaze fell on Yunyao, and there was a touch of emotion in the depths of his eyes. He wanted to greet Yunyao and chat for a while, but there were others present in the hall, so it was not appropriate. Chu Tianxing cupped his hands to Tianzi and said, "Your Majesty Tianzi, you have come all the way from Zhongzhou. The journey must be tiring, so you should rest early. I have arranged a residence for your Majesty Tianzi. Please follow me." Tianzi nodded and walked to the Sky River Palace behind the towering Sky Hall under Chu Tianxing's lead. After Chu Tianxing and Tianzi left, Ji Tianxing and Yunyao walked out of the hall side by side. The two stopped at the entrance of the hall and looked at each other, but did not say anything. After saying goodbye to each other, the two left the towering sky hall and returned to their respective residences. For the whole day, the towering sky sect was very lively and noisy. Countless disciples were talking about Tianzi and the double-headed golden dragon. Countless disciples witnessed the scene of the double-headed golden dragon descending from the sky and were shocked. Some people also saw Tianzi's appearance and aura. They said that he was so handsome that he did not look like a mortal. His temperament was as noble as a god and they worshipped him. Some people also heard that Tianzi lived in the Sky River Palace on the Red Firmament Peak. If it were not for the fear of offending Tianzi, many disciples would have run outside the Sky River Palace to watch. For the whole day, Tianzi and the Imperial General stayed in the Sky River Palace and did not appear again. After Tianzi rested for half a day, he asked the Imperial General to find countless books and information. He quietly read the information and quickly understood the situation in the Tianshan region and the details of the 8 major sections. The people of the Heart Moon sect, Thousand Autumns sect, Six Unity sect, and other major sects stayed in their respective courtyards. The people of the various sects waited patiently for news and for Tianzi to summon them. Without the Son of Heaven's order, they didn't dare to leave the Sky Pillar sect. The day passed quickly. At night, the Sky Pillar sect was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. A grand banquet was held in the sky-raising palace to welcome the Son of Heaven who had come from afar. All the sect leaders, elders, and chief disciples were fortunate enough to attend the banquet. During the banquet, the Tianjian sect master Gao Yi changed from his miserable and distressed appearance during the day to repeatedly toast the emperor. He flattered the Son of Heaven without leaving a trace, praising the Son of Heaven as a peerless hero that was rarely seen in the world. Of course, with the Son of Heaven's status, power, and talent, he could indeed be called the #1 genius of the human race. Even in the entire Tianxian land, Tianzi was one of the top few absolute geniuses. He was the true pride of the heavens. Chu Tiansheng and the other sect leaders were full of disdain for Gao Yi's actions. At the same time, on a mountain peak 25 kilometers east of the Sky Pillar sect, the bright moonlight shone on the mountain peak, covering it with a layer of hazy moonlight. On a giant rock on the mountain peak, a man and a woman were standing. They were looking at the Sky Pillar sect with cold eyes. The woman was about 2 meters tall. She wore a long black robe, a cloak, and a veil. Only a pair of dark red eyes could be seen. She was the Blood Moon Infanta. The middle-aged man standing next to her was also a demon. His body was frighteningly tall. He was more than 3 meters tall and had dark purple skin all over his body. This giant had a head full of long red hair and his entire body was covered with thick purple hair. He was not wearing any clothes and only had a black python apron wrapped around his waist. He was the Blood Moon Infanta's father, the leader of the Blood Demon tribe, the Blood Demon King. The father and daughter stood side by side and looked at the brightly lit Sky Pillar sect from afar. Cold murderous intentions surged in their eyes. Human worms of the Sky Pillar sect, it won't be long before this king turns all of you into ashes. The Blood Demon King drew back his lips and cursed with a cold tone. The Blood Moon Infanta nodded and asked in a deep voice, "Father, you have already studied the Sky Pillar sect's 9-dragon spirit vein map yesterday. Do you have any plans?" The Blood Demon King said in a cold tone, "Although I already know the 9-dragon spirit vein map like the back of my hand, the experts of various sects have gathered in the Sky Pillar sect. We can only continue to endure and cannot act rashly. I brought a soul crystal from the palace. This crystal was once one of the treasures of a certain sect in the Yong'an region. After I destroyed that sect, I kept this soul crystal until today. Now, it can finally be put to use." As he spoke, the Blood Demon King spread out his wide left hand. A silver crystal the size of an egg appeared in his palm. It flickered with a bright silver light. The Blood Moon Infanta stared at the soul crystal and said with a face full of curiosity, "Father, the high priest also mentioned the soul crystal and asked the Tianjin sect master to find a way to get one. It's a pity that the Tianjin sect master's disciple, Shi Wenyu, is too useless. Not only did he not get the soul crystal, but he was also heavily injured by Ji Tianqing and was on the verge of death. Father, what are you going to do with this soul crystal? The Blood Demon King drew back his lips and revealed a row of white fangs. He sneered and said, "Of course, I'm going to destroy the 9-dragon spirit vein in preparation for the birth of the Demon King. The soul crystal is the source of power for the Tianyuan array. It can also devour the power of the Tianyuan array and silently destroy the spirit vein array. Blood Moon, I'm going to sneak into the 9-dragon spirit vein array and use a secret technique to bury this soul crystal. The soul crystal will quietly devour the power of the 9-dragon spirit vein array and gradually destroy the structure of the spirit vein. After a month at most, the power of the 9-dragon spirit vein array will be so weak that it can no longer be maintained." The Blood Demon King sneered as he spoke of his plan. The Blood Moon Infanta nodded and praised, "Good. Father, you're going to sneak into the Sky Pillar sect alone. There are many Sky Prime experts in the Sky Pillar sect, so you must be careful." The Blood Demon King sneered in disdain, "There are only a few experts in the Sky Pillar sect that can match me. I also have the smoky umbrella, so how can I be discovered by them? What danger can there be? Blood Moon, you stay here and wait. I'll be back soon." After he finished speaking, he turned into a black mist and left the mountain peak, flying in the direction of the Sky Pillar sect. The Blood Moon Infanta stayed on the mountain peak and silently waited as she watched the black mist disappear into the night sky. After half an hour, the Blood Demon King arrived at the side of the Sky Pillar sect and arrived at the foot of the Jade Sword Peak. The invisible 9-dragon spirit vein array protected the entire Sky Pillar sect and also enveloped the Jade Sword Peak. The Blood Demon King took out the smoky umbrella and borrowed its power to quickly pass through the sect protecting array. Chapter 380. The Blood Demon King was a Sky Origin Realm expert, and with the smoky umbrella in his hand, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. He shuttled through the pitch-black underground without making any sound or emitting any demonic power fluctuations. Unless a Sky Origin Realm expert approached him, no one would be able to detect his aura. Although there were many Sky Origin Realm experts in the Sky-bearing sect, they were all attending the banquet in the Sky-bearing palace. No one would have thought that someone would take the opportunity to invade. 15 minutes later, the Blood Demon King dived into the depths of the underground and quietly used a demonic secret technique to place the Spirit Soul Crystal in the Spirit Vein array. The Spirit Soul Crystal was hidden very well and had fused with the array's aura. It was impossible for anyone to discover it. After doing all this, the Blood Demon King sneered and silently left the underground. 30 minutes later, he returned to the mountain peak 50 miles away from the Sky-bearing sect and appeared beside the Blood Moon Infanta. Seeing that he had returned safely, the Blood Moon Infanta hurriedly asked, "Father, did the plan go smoothly?" "Of course it went smoothly." The Blood Demon King sneered confidently. "I have already placed the Spirit Soul Crystal in the depths of the Spirit Vein array. After 1 month, the power of the Spirit Vein array will be exhausted. At that time, even if the people of the Sky-bearing sect discover the abnormality, it will be too late to remedy it. We can take the opportunity to destroy the seal and rescue the Demon King." The Blood Moon Infanta's blood boiled and she clenched her fists in excitement. "Great! Father, we will succeed soon." "Yes." The Blood Demon King nodded and said, "However, it is still too early to be happy. I still need to make more preparations." He warned the Blood Moon Infanta in a low voice, "Blood Moon, for the next few days, stay nearby and secretly pay attention to the Sky-bearing sect's movements. If there is any news from the Sky-bearing sect, you must immediately send a message to me. In addition, you must also pay attention to hiding. Don't be discovered by the people of the Sky-bearing sect." "I understand." The Blood Moon Infanta nodded solemnly and asked in confusion, "Father, what are you going to do? Aren't you coming with me?" The Blood Demon King grinned and said in a playful tone, "I haven't been to the ancient star realm for many years. Since I've returned, I must ensure that the plan goes smoothly. This king has an old friend in the ancient realm. It's time to go see her." Hearing this, Blood Moon Infanta vaguely understood something. She nodded and didn't ask any more questions. After that, the Blood Demon King left the smoky net umbrella to her, turned into a black mist, and flew away. She remained alone at the peak of the mountain, sitting on a millstone and silently watching the bright lights of the Sky Pillar sect. The noisy and bustling night with undercurrents finally came to an end. The next morning, when the sun had just risen, there was still a faint layer of morning mist between the peaks of the sky-bearing sect. The jade ripple lake behind the heaven-upholding peak was also shrouded in a thin layer of mist, making it even more beautiful and mysterious than before. The clear water rippled in the lake, and the willow trees swayed gently on the shore. Not far away from the spirit herb garden, there were still waves of fragrance from the plants. The scenery by the lake was really fresh and elegant. At this time, a young man and woman were taking a stroll on the bluestone path under the willow trees by the lake. The man was tall and handsome. He wore a brocade robe and a pair of gold-rimmed firewalking boots. His long hair was tied up with a jade crown, making him look like an immortal. There was no doubt that he was the son of heaven, Long Yunxiao. The woman beside him was wearing a long white dress. She had an extremely beautiful appearance and a cold temperament. She was Yun Yao. Yesterday, Long Yunxiao had arrived at the sky-bearing sect for the first time. He had to accept the visits of the various sect masters, so he naturally had to dress up. He wore a golden robe and a crown. Today, he didn't plan to deal with sect matters. It was his private time, so he changed into casual clothes. Even so, he was still extraordinarily handsome, and his temperament was noble and graceful. The two strolled along the path by the lake. Although they were walking side by side, they maintained a distance of 2 steps between each other. This distance was just right. It didn't appear to be close, but it wasn't too distant either. It was a normal distance between ordinary friends. Long Yunxiao seemed to be in a good mood. He smiled and said in a gentle tone, "Yao Yao, I remember the first time I saw you was 9 years ago. That was at Uncle Yun's 100th birthday banquet. That night, you were wearing the water moon frozen star dress. Although you were still young, you were already a little beauty who suppressed the entire audience and stunned all the guests. I didn't expect that 9 years would pass in the blink of an eye. You've become a peerless beauty and the #1 genius of the Tianjin region. Time really flies." As Long Yunxiao spoke, his eyes revealed a look of reminiscence. A smile also appeared on his handsome face. Yun Yao was still as calm as usual. Her temperament was cold and she didn't have much of a reaction. "Son of heaven, you disturbed my sleep early in the morning and asked me to take a stroll by the lake. Are you trying to help me remember the past? There's no need to mention those things of the past. You should just get to the point." Long Yunxiao wasn't angry. Instead, a playful smile appeared on his face. "Yao Yao, I didn't expect that after staying in the Tianjin region for a few years, your personality would change a little. You're not as cold as before." He knew very well that Yun Yao's personality was even colder in the past. She wouldn't say so much to him. Yun Yao frowned slightly but didn't say anything. Long Yunxiao continued, "Yao Yao, I know that the reason why you left the Cloud Spirit Palace, left the Central State, and came to this remote Tianjin region was to avoid me. But now, the Emperor and Mother are going to choose a concubine for me. They've chosen the 3 most outstanding candidates from the 9 regions. Coincidentally, you're one of them. Yao Yao, don't you think that this is fate and our destiny? Even if you ran to this remote Tianjin region to avoid me, you still have to reunite with me in the end." After saying that, he looked at Yun Yao with a gentle gaze. His face was full of tenderness. Yun Yao glanced at him and said indifferently, "You should know that I don't believe in fate. I only believe that man can conquer the heavens. Of course, my fate is in my control. Also, I heard that the other two heavenly concubine candidates aren't bad either. In terms of looks, they're alluring beauties. In terms of talent, they're top geniuses. Why don't you consider them?" A smile flashed across Long Yunxiao's eyes. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Yao Yao, can I interpret your words as jealousy?" Yun Yao looked at him indifferently and said coldly, "You're thinking too much." Long Yunxiao said to himself, "Yao Yao, you should know that from the first time I saw you, I've decided that you'll be my heavenly concubine. With such a beautiful woman like you, how could other women enter my eyes? Compared to you, they're all ordinary women. I know that you don't want to be my heavenly concubine, but it doesn't matter. I won't force you to do something you don't want to." Chapter 381. Yun Yao wasn't surprised by Long Yunxiao's attitude. Long Yunxiao had said this a few years ago, and it hadn't changed until now. She couldn't help but frown. She said calmly, "Son of heaven, you know that it's impossible. Why are you wasting time on me?" Long Yunxiao's voice was still gentle. "With our talent and strength, we don't lack time. We can live for 300 to 500 years. I will always wait for you." Yun Yao glanced at him and didn't say anything else. Both of them were very firm. It was impossible to change each other's minds with just a few words. Since that was the case, Yun Yao didn't want to continue talking about this with him. She remained silent and strolled along the bluestone path by the lake. Her eyes were fixed on the misty lake. Long Yunxiao walked beside her and talked about some interesting past events. His eyes and tone were very gentle from beginning to end. No matter what Yun Yao's reaction was or what her attitude was, he was always gentle and gentlemanly. This had been the case for many years, and it hadn't changed even now. 15 minutes passed quickly. At this moment, a young man in a white robe walked over from the bluestone path in front of them. The young man in the white robe was also strolling by the lake. The two of them met unexpectedly. When Yun Yao saw the young man in the white robe walking over, her cold expression and eyes softened a lot. She greeted him. "Junior brother Tianqing, good morning." Without a doubt, the young man in the white robe walking over was Ji Tianqing. After the banquet last night, he didn't sleep at all. He had been meditating and cultivating. When dawn came, he casually walked around the towering sky peak. Unknowingly, he arrived at the Jade Wave Lake at the back of the mountain. He did not expect to meet Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao, who was beside her, here. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. Then, he calmly walked in front of the two of them and greeted them with cupped fists. "Greetings, Your Majesty. Eldest senior sister, the two of you sure are in a good mood. Are you here to admire the scenery of Jade Wave Lake so early in the morning?" He calmly looked at Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao and chatted with them. His mood didn't change at all. Long Yunxiao looked at him and smiled. He nodded in return. However, Long Yunxiao was not familiar with him. He only knew that he was Chu Tianqing's personal disciple, so he did not speak to him. However, Yun Yao walked to Ji Tianqing's side and stood face to face with him. She said in a gentle tone, "Junior brother Tianqing, Tianzi and I have known each other since we were young. This time, he was ordered to come to the Heavenly Star region to take charge of the situation. He also came to visit me on the way, so he invited me to take a walk by the lake early in the morning," Yun Yao explained briefly. Although her expression was normal, Ji Tianqing felt that something was amiss when he heard it. He thought to himself, so big senior sister and Tianzi have known each other since they were young. In that case, my previous guess was not wrong. Eldest senior sister's background is indeed not simple. Eldest senior sister is explaining to me in person. Are you afraid that I will misunderstand something? He already had a sense of propriety in his heart, so he said to Yun Yao and Long Yun Shao, I didn't expect eldest senior sister and Tianzi to be friends. Since old friends have met, of course I should visit and greet them. Long Yun Shao only cared about Yun Yao. Why would he care about what Ji Tianqing said or did? At this time, Yun Yao cupped her hands and bowed to Tianqing. She said apologetically, Tianzi, I'm sorry. I made an appointment with junior brother Tianqing to go to the Creek Mountain Flower Valley today. Please forgive Yun Yao for not being able to accompany you. Goodbye. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Long Yun Shao were stunned. Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change, but he was secretly puzzled. Strange, when did I have an appointment with eldest senior sister? Why are we going to the Creek Mountain Flower Valley? However, he was quick-witted and immediately guessed Yun Yao's intention. Could it be that eldest senior sister deliberately said this to use this as an excuse to get rid of Tianzi? Thinking of this, he also cupped his hands and bowed to Long Yun Shao. He revealed an apologetic smile and said, Your Majesty, please excuse me. Long Yun Shao frowned slightly. He glanced at Ji Tianqing and then looked at Yun Yao. He vaguely guessed something in his heart. He secretly pondered in his heart, but his expression didn't change at all. He smiled and said, Yao Yao, I came all the way to the Tianshan region to meet you. I just chatted with you for a while, and you want to leave me here. Aren't you treating me as a friend? It just so happens that I also want to see the scenery of the Tianshan region. Yao Yao, shouldn't you be a good host and take me to see it? Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao didn't expect Long Yun Shao to be so persistent and insist on going with them. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely be embarrassed to disturb their date and would have left long ago. However, Long Yun Shao was an honored guest and they were disciples of the Sky Pillar sect. They should be warmly received. Moreover, Long Yun Zhao's words were neither light nor heavy. He was jokingly reprimanding Yun Yao, making it impossible for Yun Yao to refuse. Helpless, she could only say calmly, since Tianzi also wants to see the scenery, as disciples of the Sky Pillar sect, we naturally have to entertain you. Tianzi, please. Then, Yun Yao, Ji Tianqing, and Long Yun Shao left the Jade Lake together and walked towards the Creek Mountain in the depths of the Sky Pillar sect. The Creek Mountain was one of the 9 peaks of the Sky Pillar sect. It was located in the deepest part of the mountain range and the scenery was very beautiful. There was a valley in the Creek Mountain that was filled with 5-colored spirit flowers. The flowers didn't wither all year round and the scenery was beautiful and pleasant. Ever since Ji Tianqing entered the Sky Pillar sect, he had been busy cultivating and increasing his strength and had never been to the Creek Mountain. After the 3 of them left the Sky Pillar peak, they quickly walked through the forest between the peaks and went straight to the Creek Mountain's Flower Valley. Yun Yao had a cold personality and Ji Tianqing had an introverted personality. The 2 of them weren't good at talking and socializing. Long Yun Shao was eloquent, but he hid his thoughts and didn't chat with Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing on the way. He silently observed Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. From some clues, he could see that Yun Yao's attitude towards Ji Tianqing was both trusting and close. The 2 of them walked side by side and were only half a foot apart. They didn't feel strange at all. In Long Yun Zhao's eyes, this distance made them seem as intimate as a couple, making him feel a little gloomy. However, Long Yun Shao understood Yun Yao's temperament very well. He had known Yun Yao for many years, but when had he ever seen Yun Yao take the initiative to get close to someone? With Yun Yao's taste, how could she fall for such an ordinary person? She's only doing this to deliberately avoid me. Thinking of this, Long Yun Shao felt a lot more relieved. After an hour, the 3 of them were about to reach the foot of the Creek Mountain. At this time, Long Yun Zhao's spiritual sense inadvertently discovered that there was a white-browed old man in a yellow robe who seemed to have been following them 100 meters behind them. The white-browed old man was short and fat with a goatee on his chin. His strength had also reached the peak of the Origin Core stage. Chapter 382. Not long after, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Long Yunshao climbed up Shi Mountain. This was a mountain peak that was more than 3,000 meters tall. There was a huge rain-making spiritual formation on the mountain peak. The formation kept condensing thick clouds, and drizzling rain continued to fall, converging into a clear lake on the mountain peak. The lake water flowed down from the mountain peak, forming several streams on the hillside, and flowed to the valley halfway up the mountain. The valley was full of 5-colored spiritual flowers, which emitted a fragrant fragrance, attracting many bees and butterflies to wander among the flowers. A few streams flowed down from the mountain peak and passed through the flower valley, adding a bit of poetry to the flower valley. The name Shi Mountain was also derived from this. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Long Yunshao strolled in the flower valley, admiring the spiritual flowers and mountains. Their moods became much more relaxed and happy. Long Yunshao could see that Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were close, and there seemed to be signs of affection. However, he didn't take Ji Tianqing seriously, nor did he show the slightest dissatisfaction. He acted as if he didn't notice it at all. As usual, he chatted with Yun Yao and reminisced about the past. His words and actions were full of the majesty and bearing of an emperor. However, Yun Yao didn't have much interest in the topics he talked about. She had been silent the whole time. She was only closer to Ji Tianqing. Occasionally, she would chat with Ji Tianqing. Her tone and expression were also very gentle. In a bush at the edge of the flower valley, an old man in a yellow robe was hiding in the bushes, observing the movements of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao from afar. This person had a short stature and a big belly, but he had to act like an immortal. Without a doubt, he was the trusted aide of the Tianjin sect master, Gao Yi, guest elder Huangfu. At this time, guest elder Huangfu was curled up in the bushes, peeping at Ji Tianqing and the others from afar. There was a playful sneer in his eyes. "Hee, the sect master asked me to secretly move around the Sky Pillar sect and see if I can find any clues. I didn't expect that I would find such shocking news today." The honorable emperor not only knows Yun Yao, but he also has deep feelings for Yun Yao. Unfortunately, Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing secretly have feelings for each other. They seem to be close. Humph. How interesting. Guest elder Huangfu sneered in his heart. After peeping for a while, he quietly turned around and left. After leaving Creek Mountain, he hurriedly rushed back to Heaven Pillar Peak and entered a courtyard house with a cold environment. This residence was called the Guest Courtyard. It was a residence that the Sky Pillar sect used to receive guests. The Sky Pillar sect had arranged for the Heavenly Sword sect master Gao Yi and guest elder Huangfu to stay in this courtyard. After entering the courtyard, guest elder Huangfu carefully observed his surroundings and made sure that nobody was following him before he quietly entered the secret chamber. The secret room was dimly lit and empty. Apart from the 2 jade futons, there was nothing else in the room. Gao Yi was sitting cross-legged on a futon, meditating and cultivating with his eyes closed. After guest elder Huangfu entered the secret chamber, he quickly closed the stone door and cast a soundproofing array formation. Gao Yi was awakened by him and opened his eyes. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Guest elder Huangfu, you seem to be in a hurry. What happened?" Guest elder Huangfu cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Sect master, you asked this subordinate to secretly move around in the Sky Pillar sect." This subordinate obeyed and quietly watched Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Just now, this subordinate discovered a rather shocking matter. This is definitely the best news for us. Hearing this, Gao Yi's interest was immediately piqued. His eyes lit up. "Tell me, what is the good news?" Guest elder Huangfu lowered his voice and reported truthfully, "Just now, this subordinate saw Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Tianzi. The 3 of them were actually together and even went to the Creek Mountain Flower Valley to enjoy the scenery. This subordinate followed them all the way to the Creek Mountain Flower Valley. After observing for a long time, I found out that Tianzi and Yun Yao had known each other for a long time. Moreover, Tianzi is very devoted to Yunyao. However, Yunyao's attitude towards Tianzi seems to be a little cold, but she is closer to Ji Tianqing. Hearing this, Gao Yi raised his eyebrows and a smile appeared on his face. He said in a low voice, "Hehe, I really didn't expect Yunyao to have such good fortune. Since Tianzi and Yunyao know each other and have deep feelings for each other, he will definitely choose Yunyao as his heavenly consort. This is a great thing for the Tianshan region. In the future, the Tianshan region will be taken care of by the imperial court and will definitely become the most powerful region. We will also be able to obtain great benefits from this. However, that little bastard Ji Tianqing is too much of a hindrance. He is sandwiched in the middle to prevent Yunyao and Tianzi from contacting each other. I'm afraid he will ruin this matter. Guest Elder Huangfu, we have to think of a way to restrain Ji Tianqing and make him keep a distance from Yunyao. This way, Tianzi will have a chance to get close to Yunyao." Guest Elder Huangfu frowned and thought for a moment. However, he shook his head and said, "Sect Master, this subordinate feels that this matter is inappropriate. If Yunyao becomes the heavenly consort, it will do us more harm than good. After all, Yunyao is the chief disciple of the Sky Pillar sect. If she really becomes the heavenly consort, the Sky Pillar sect will have a backer and will definitely be taken care of by the imperial court. At that time, the Sky Pillar sect will be like a tiger that has grown wings, and its power will be even stronger. Not only will we not be able to deal with the Sky Pillar sect, but we will definitely be suppressed by them even more miserably." Gao Yi's brows immediately knitted together, and a gloomy cold light flashed in his eyes. After thinking for a moment, he nodded in agreement and said, "That's right. If Yunyao really becomes the heavenly consort, it will definitely destroy our plan and make the Sky Pillar sect even more powerful. We can't provoke them." Guest Elder Huangfu frowned and thought for a moment before saying, "Sect Master, this subordinate feels that we might as well put the matter of the heavenly consort aside and ignore it. At present, what we should consider more is how to use external forces to deal with the Sky Pillar sect. This subordinate believes that Tianzi's position is high and noble, and he is the most powerful external force. If we can cause conflict between the Sky Pillar sect and Tianzi and make Tianzi dissatisfied with the Sky Pillar sect, then the Sky Pillar sect will be in danger. This is the best situation for us. Make Tianzi dissatisfied with the Sky Pillar sect." Gao Yi revealed a puzzled expression and asked, "Guest Elder Huangfu, what do you think?" Guest Elder Huangfu already had an idea. He revealed an unfathomable smile and said, "The person Tianzi cares about is Yunyao, and Yunyao's attitude towards him is cold, but she is close to Ji Tianqing. Since that's the case, then we can do the opposite and prevent Yunyao from becoming the heavenly consort." At this point, Gao Yi suddenly came to a realization, and a cold smile appeared on his face. This king understands. Since Tianzi cares about Yunyao, then we will think of a way to matchmake Ji Tianqing and Yunyao together and let Ji Tianqing get Yunyao. If Tianzi's heavenly consort is snatched away, he will definitely hate Ji Tianqing to the bone and vent his anger on the Sky Pillar sect. Chapter 383. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Long Yunshao played in the valley for half a day before leaving. After leaving the valley, the three of them went to several other mountain peaks to enjoy the scenery of the Sky Pillar sect. During this period, Yunyao deliberately ignored Long Yunshao and walked side by side with Ji Tianqing. Their conversation and behavior were relatively close. Even those who didn't know could see that Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were a couple, and Long Yunshao was the awkward third party. However, Long Yunshao didn't feel awkward at all. His expression was normal from beginning to end, and he even praised the scenery of the Sky Pillar sect. After the sun set, the three of them ended their tour and returned to their respective residences to rest. After Yunyao returned to the White Cloud Hall, she sat cross-legged on the bed and meditated. In the past few days, the emperor and the sect leaders of the various sects were in the Sky Pillar sect. As the chief disciple, she had to appear every day to deal with some matters. Therefore, she couldn't enter the secret room to cultivate in seclusion. She could only meditate and cultivate. Unknowingly, for hours passed and it was late at night. The entire scarlet firmament peak was quiet and shrouded in the hazy moonlight, looking quiet and serene. Yunyao ended her cultivation and opened her eyes. Today is the middle of the month. It's time to go to the spirit moon hot spring to cultivate. She muttered in a low voice, got up, left the room, and walked towards the backyard of the White Cloud Hall. There was a 10-meter square stone room in the backyard. It was set up with a special mysterious array and built into the spirit moon hot spring. This stone room was connected to Yunyao's bedroom and the secret room for cultivation. It only had 3 walls. There was no wall in front of it, nor was there a door. There was only a carved jade screen that separated the hot spring from the passage. Yunyao walked behind the screen and took off her phoenix-patterned boots, revealing a pair of fair and sparkling jade feet. Then, she walked towards the hot spring. This hot spring was 10 meters square. The water in the hot spring was boiling and contained a rich silver-white brilliance. Dense spiritual energy rose from it. There were many moon-white gems embedded at the bottom and the edges of the pool. They emitted a sparkling white light and illuminated the hot spring. This spirit moon hot spring was specially set up by Yunyao and expended a lot of materials to create it. She had the bloodline of the heavenly spirit sacred body, so her physique was different from ordinary people. Her cultivation attribute was also somewhat special. Ever since she was 6 years old, she would soak in the spirit moon hot spring for a night every month. While cleansing her body and mind, she also had to cultivate and strengthen her bloodline power. When she was in Cloud Spirit Palace, Madame Yun had specially built a spirit moon sky spring for her. The heavenly spring was located in the clouds of the 9 heavens. It had an incomparably miraculous effect and was also very secretive. After she came to the sky-bearing sect, she naturally didn't have the same good conditions as in Cloud Spirit Palace. She could only build a spirit moon hot spring in the backyard. Yunyao walked to the edge of the hot spring and waved her hand to release a beam of true essence, activating the array formation of the hot spring. Suddenly, the bottom of the hot spring lit up with specks of moonlight, making the entire hot spring hazy and overflowing with spiritual energy. She reached out and removed the jade belt from her waist. Then, she took off her white dress and stored both the dress and the jade belt into her spatial ring. What a perfect, flawless, and peerless beauty! Her tall and slender figure, her white jade-like skin, her proud curves, and her alluring face. Every one of them was intoxicating and infatuating. Yunyao took out a white sand belt from her spatial ring and wrapped it around her slender waist, covering her white underwear and perky curves. Under the hazy moonlight, her straight and slender legs were as smooth and flawless as white jade, like the most perfect piece of art. She only wore a moon-white dudu on her upper body that wrapped around her undulating chest and her flat and white belly. She raised her arm to tidy her hair and bun before stepping into the hot spring. Ripples appeared on the surface of the hot spring, reflecting the hazy light. It made the hot spring feel like a dream and intoxicating. Yunyao walked into the hot spring and sat down cross-legged. The warm moon-white water immediately submerged her flawless body up to her shoulders. She formed a seal with both hands and placed them flat on her smooth and delicate knees. Then, she closed her eyes and began to cultivate. The hot spring was silent. Rich and gentle spiritual energy kept flowing into her body, cleansing her body and strengthening her bloodline. At the same time, Ji Tianqing was cultivating in his room to consolidate his martial arts foundation. Suddenly, a black figure flashed across the night sky and silently landed in the courtyard. It was a short and fat man in black. He had profound skills and was very agile. The man in black used his spiritual sense to investigate and immediately found Ji Tianqing in the room. He waved his hand and shot out 2 cold lights, which shot toward Ji Tianqing as fast as shooting stars. Swish! Swish! The two cold lights pierced through the night sky and instantly pierced through the wooden window, shooting toward Ji Tianqing's head. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing was suddenly awakened and subconsciously tilted his head. The two cold lights suddenly brushed past him and nailed to the wall with two clanking sounds, splashing sparks. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw that it was two hidden weapons, the Morning Soul nails. Someone is ambushing me. His face suddenly turned gloomy and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He leaped towards the window and smashed the wooden window with a bang before rushing into the courtyard. The man in black saw him appear and turned around to escape without hesitation. His figure flashed and jumped over the courtyard wall and out of the courtyard. Ji Tianqing also jumped over the courtyard wall without hesitation and chased after the man in black. Humph! Now that the Emperor and the sect masters are living in our sect, I want to see who is so bold to launch a sneak attack at this time. He snorted coldly in his heart and his eyes surged with a biting cold murderous intent. He used his shadowless steps with all his strength and followed the man in black. He passed through the dark night and ran down the mountain. No matter what, he had to catch that black-clothed man and see who had the guts to do such a thing. A quarter of an hour passed quickly. Ji Tianqing chased with all his strength, but he could not catch up with the man in black. He was dozens of meters away from him. At this time, he realized that he had chased the man in black up the red cloud peak and arrived outside the white cloud hall. Swoosh! The man in black flashed and jumped into the white cloud hall. Ji Tianqing was stunned and thought to himself, White Cloud Hall. Isn't this the residence of Senior Sister? It's late at night now. Would it be rude for me to rush in like this? However, he thought about it again. The man in black's identity was unknown. He came with ill intentions and was very powerful. If the man in black sneaked into the White Cloud Hall to assassinate Yun Yao would be in danger. Moreover, the Tianjin sect had plotted to kill him and Yun Yao. He could not help but suspect that the man in black might be related to the Tianjin sect. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated and jumped into the White Cloud Hall. He moved quickly in the night to search for the man in black. After 100 seconds, Ji Tianqing searched the White Cloud Hall but did not find the man in black. He did not find any clues. His expression became more serious and he became more worried. He ran through Yun Yao's bedroom and went to the backyard. In the entire White Cloud Hall, only the backyard was not searched. He passed through the dark passage and saw a white jade screen at the end of the passage. Behind the screen was a stone room, which was faintly lit. He did not think much and rushed over as fast as the wind. However, when he went around the white jade screen and saw the scene in front of him, he was stunned. He never expected that the stone room behind the screen was a hot spring with abundant spiritual qi and hazy moonlight. In the hot spring, there was a long-haired beauty with a beautiful face and flawless skin. It was Yun Yao. She was cultivating with her eyes closed. Her chest and fair shoulders were above the water's surface. She was not wearing a long skirt. She was only wearing a dudu and a tulle. Brothers, where are the recommendation tickets? Chapter 384. Yun Yao was sitting upright in the hot spring, and her body below her neck was submerged in the water. However, Ji Tianqing could vaguely see the breathtaking beauty under the water. Yun Yao, who was cultivating, was immediately awakened and opened her eyes subconsciously. When she saw that the person who broke into the hot spring was a man, a cold light gushed out of her eyes, and she subconsciously raised her hand to attack. However, when she saw that the person who broke into the hot spring was Ji Tianqing, she was stunned. The two of them were only 10 steps away from each other. When their eyes met, they were a little absent-minded and forgot to speak. Ji Tianqing's worry and anxiety turned into embarrassment. His eyes were a little evasive, and he didn't dare to look into Yun Yao's eyes. Yun Yao's pretty face was faintly red, and her lovely earlobes turned red. Her delicate body was also slightly trembling in embarrassment. She didn't expect that Ji Tianqing would break into the White Cloud Hall at this time and suddenly appear in the hot spring. If it were someone else, she would have sent that person flying with a slap. After a while, Yun Yao came back to her senses. She quickly lowered her head and raised her hands in front of her chest to cover the deep, snow-white cleavage in her dudu. Ji Tianqing also came back to his senses. He quickly looked away and was about to explain. However, before he could open his mouth to speak, Yun Yao's expression changed again. Her eyes were sharp as she looked at the screen behind him. In the passage behind the screen, there was the sound of robes fluttering in the air. Obviously, someone was rushing over quickly. Moreover, Yun Yao's soul sense had already detected that the person who was rushing over was the person she didn't want to see the most. At this critical moment, she didn't hesitate to send a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. "Tianqing, come to me quickly and hide." Ji Tianqing was stunned. His heart skipped a beat, and he revealed an incredulous look. However, he also sensed that someone was rushing over quickly from the passage behind him. Seeing Yun Yao's anxious face, he didn't have time to think. He immediately jumped into the hot spring and rushed to Yun Yao's side. Yun Yao reached out and pressed his shoulders, telling him to dive into the water and hide. She stood in front of Ji Tianqing and took out a long dress from her spatial ring, covering everything below her neck. The next moment, a thin man's figure crossed the screen like a gust of wind and came to the hot spring. This person had a handsome appearance. He wore a brocade robe and a feathered crown on his head. He was the son of heaven, Long Yunxiao. When Long Yunxiao saw the hot spring filled with spiritual energy in Yun Yao who was sitting in the hot spring, he was dumbfounded. Yun Yao covered her body with a long dress, only revealing her neck and head. However, she was still soaking in the hot spring and seemed to be practicing martial arts. As a man of the opposite sex and the emperor of the imperial court, he actually broke into a woman's residence in the middle of the night and peeped on her bathing in the hot spring. No matter what, this was a great offense, an extremely rude action. Long Yunxiao was so embarrassed that he couldn't show his face. He stared at Yun Yao's beautiful face and forgot to explain himself. Especially when Yun Yao's eyes were cold and her face was cold. She was glaring at him angrily, which made him feel even more guilty. "Long Yunxiao! How dare you be so rude?" Yun Yao shouted angrily. "Yao Yao, it's not what you think. Let me explain." Long Yunxiao's face turned red in embarrassment, and he quickly tried to explain himself. However, before he could explain himself, Yun Yao shouted angrily, "Get out!" The emperor of the imperial court, the son of the most respected emperor of the human race, was scolded by Yun Yao, but he didn't lose his temper at all. Long Yunxiao cupped his hands and bowed guiltily. He quickly left the hot spring and went around the screen to return to the passageway. After he left, Yun Yao secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Ji Tianqing hid behind her and stuck close to her fair and smooth back. Their posture was extremely intimate and ambiguous. However, Long Yunxiao hadn't left yet, so she could only suppress her embarrassment and didn't dare to move at all to avoid being noticed. At this moment, Long Yunxiao was standing 10 meters behind the screen. After he calmed down, he explained, "Yao Yao, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Just now, I was resting in my residence when I suddenly received a letter. It said that your life was in danger. Although that letter was most likely fake, even if it was only 10% true, I had to rush over to see what was going on. I couldn't let anything happen to you." After he finished explaining, Yun Yao said coldly, "Thank you for your concern. You were deceived. I'm safe and sound. You can leave now." Long Yunxiao tried to persuade her again, but she remained silent. It was obvious that her anger hadn't subsided, so he could only leave. After a while, when Long Yunxiao left the White Cloud Hall, Yun Yao finally relaxed. She lowered her head to look at the pool and saw Ji Tianqing's hands wrapped around her waist. His whole body was pressed against her body. She immediately blushed and reached out to grab Ji Tianqing's collar and pulled him out of the water. Splash! Ji Tianqing came out from under the water, bringing up a big splash. He quickly used his hands to push his wet hair away and wiped the water off his face. He was secretly gasping for breath. He didn't know if it was because he had held his breath for too long, or because he was too excited or ashamed, but his face was a little red. Yunyao turned her head to look at him. She suppressed her embarrassment and pretended to be angry as she asked, "Tianqing, why didn't you stay in the Tianqing courtyard? Why did you break into the White Cloud Hall in the middle of the night?" Ji Tianqing gazed at her and quickly explained, "Eldest senior sister, I was cultivating in my room when I was suddenly attacked by a man in black. I followed him all the way to the White Cloud Hall. Recently, people from all the sects have gathered in our sect. There are too many people. I was worried that someone would harm you, so I came to see if you were okay." I didn't expect. His experience and thoughts were somewhat similar to Long Yunxiao's. Yunyao immediately frowned. She couldn't help but suspect that there was something fishy about this matter. Ji Tianqing looked at her with gentle eyes. His mind was filled with complicated thoughts. He thought to himself, "I rashly broke into the hot spring and saw eldest senior sister bathing. I was so rude, but she didn't have any intention of reprimanding me. She found out that Long Yunxiao was here. To prevent my identity from being exposed, she didn't care about her reputation and asked me to hide behind her. Even though I had such intimate contact with her, she didn't really get angry. If eldest senior sister didn't have feelings for me, she definitely wouldn't do this." Ji Tianqing calmly analyzed and immediately understood Yunyao's thoughts. He was very moved. Looking at her beautiful face that was so close to him, his blood suddenly flowed faster. A strong impulse inexplicably appeared in his heart. Driven by that impulse, he forgot everything. He subconsciously stretched out his arms and tightly hugged Yunyao in his arms. He bent down and kissed her soft cherry lips. Yunyao was frowning and thinking about the man in black. She didn't expect Ji Tianqing to suddenly hug her and immediately woke up. She was about to speak, but her small mouth was blocked by Ji Tianqing's. Chapter 385. After a long while, Ji Tianqing was still immersed in this deep kiss. She had already regained her senses and hurriedly pushed Ji Tianqing away. "Junior brother Tianqing, Yunyao looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Her expression and eyes were very complicated, and she was so embarrassed that she almost suffocated. Ji Tianqing gazed into her eyes with a gentle gaze. He mustered up his courage and said solemnly, "Eldest senior sister, however, before he could say the words that had been buried in his heart for a long time, Yunyao reached out and pressed her hand on his lips, interrupting him. "Junior brother Tianqing, you should go back." After saying that, she jumped out of the hot spring and landed lightly beside the hot spring. When she was in mid-air, she had already wrapped her long dress around her body and covered her flawless jade body. Swoosh! Her figure flashed past the screen, entered the passage, and immediately hid in the secret cultivation room. Ji Tianqing was still standing in the hot spring. He smiled happily as he watched Yunyao's fairy-like figure leave. "Eldest senior sister, really has me in her heart." He secretly clenched his fists. The excitement and agitation in his heart made his blood boil. After a while, he jumped out of the hot spring and used his true essence to dry his robes. He took advantage of the night to leave White Cloud Hall. When he returned to Tianqing's courtyard, he was still sitting on the bed in a daze, recalling the scene in the hot spring. At this time, his heart was in a mess. His mind was full of Yunyao's beautiful figure, and he couldn't cultivate it all. After thinking for a while, he couldn't help but purse his lips and recall the taste of that deep kiss. After Long Yunxiao returned to his residence, he also sat at the desk by the window. He stared at the night sky outside the window and fell into deep thought. His face was a little gloomy, his brows were tightly knitted, and his eyes were very cold. Previously, he had rashly barged into the hot spring and was reprimanded by Yun Yao. The situation at that time was special and completely out of his expectations. He didn't notice any clues. Now that he had calmed down and carefully recalled the scene at that time, he felt that it was a little strange. He knew Yun Yao very well. He knew Yun Yao's temperament very well. Yun Yao's behavior and reaction at that time seemed a little strange to him. She seemed to want to hide something, so she was eager to chase him away. Not only that, but he also sensed the aura of another person in the backyard. Thinking up to this point, Long Yunxiao's heart grew heavier and heavier. He muttered in a low voice, "Yao Yao, who exactly are you trying to protect?" At this time, a general in golden armor walked into the room quickly. He cupped his hands and reported, "Emperor, I followed your orders and observed from outside the White Cloud Hall. Sure enough, I found something." Long Yunxiao collected his thoughts and raised his head to look at the Imperial Forest General. He asked in a deep voice, "General Li, what did you discover?" General Li answered truthfully, "Emperor, not long after you left, I saw a young man in a white robe come out of the White Cloud Hall and leave quietly. That young man in a white robe is sect leader Chu's personal disciple, Ji Tianqing." Ji Tianqing. It's really him. Long Yunxiao frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Today, he, Yun Yao, and Ji Tianqing were traveling together. Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing appeared to be very close. Originally, he thought that Yun Yao would definitely look down on an ordinary person like Ji Tianqing. She was just pretending to be close to Ji Tianqing. She was deliberately putting on an act for him to see so that he would retreat. But now, it seemed that things were a little beyond his expectations. Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were deliberately getting close to each other. He was afraid that it wasn't as simple as acting. Thinking up to this point, Long Yunxiao's expression became more and more solemn, and many complicated thoughts surged in his mind. General Li didn't leave and continued to report, "Emperor, I met a person on my way back. That person was wearing the gray linen clothes of a servant disciple, but he claimed to be an elite disciple of the Sky Pillar sect. He also said that he had urgent news to report to you." Hearing this, Long Yunxiao frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, "Bring him in." "Yes, Emperor." General Li cupped his hands and accepted the order, then turned and left. Then, he brought a young man in linen clothes into the room. This person had a handsome face and a feminine temperament. His face was sickly pale. It was Bai Wuchen. He quickly walked into the room and bowed respectfully to Long Yunxiao. Disciple of the Sky Pillar sect, Bai Wuchen, pays his respects to the benevolent Holy Emperor. Reporting to Your Highness, Emperor, this disciple has very important news that I must report to you in person. Long Yunxiao looked at him indifferently, his eyes carrying a sense of scrutiny. "Bai Wuchen, since you're an elite disciple, why did you become a servant?" At the mention of this matter, Bai Wuchen's face was filled with grief and indignation. He said in a gloomy tone, "Emperor, all of this is because of Ji Tianqing. This person is sinister and cunning. On the surface, he looks steady and kind, but in reality, he's a scheming person who seeks revenge for the smallest grievance." Long Yunxiao furrowed his brows when he saw Bai Wuchen cursing Ji Tianqing viciously. His tone was indifferent as he said, "So, your so-called urgent news has something to do with Ji Tianqing?" "Of course." Bai Wuchen nodded heavily. He peeked at Long Yunxiao's reaction and probed, "Also, it has something to do with eldest senior sister Yun Yao." Long Yunxiao looked at him expressionlessly and said in a deep voice, "Go on." Bai Wuchen was secretly delighted and quickly added fuel to the fire. "Your Highness, Ji Tianqing was originally the young master of a small family in a declining country. Because of eldest senior sister's benevolence, she accidentally saved his life. Ji Tianqing used this opportunity to get close to eldest senior sister. Under her care, he became a disciple of our sect. Ever since he entered our sect, Ji Tianqing relied on his friendship with eldest senior sister to bully the other disciples. He's very arrogant and overbearing. Moreover, Ji Tianqing has been pestering eldest senior sister with ulterior motives. Ji Tianqing looks dull and honest on the surface, but in reality, he has many tricks up his sleeve. He's very good at sweet-talking eldest senior sister. Eldest senior sister is pure and kind, so she was bewitched by Ji Tianqing's sweet words. I warned Ji Tianqing and also reminded eldest senior sister twice. However, because of this, Ji Tianqing hated me. In order to get eldest senior sister, he didn't hesitate to use despicable means and forced me to be demoted to a servant. He became famous in the sect and became a genius in everyone's eyes. Without my interference, no one reminded eldest senior sister again. Because of this, she fell into Ji Tianqing's evil clutches. The two of them are inseparable. Now, they're stuck together like glue. Bai Wuqian tried his best to slander Ji Tianqing. Not only did he add fuel to the fire, but he also twisted the facts and made up lies. It could be said that he was unscrupulous. Long Yunxiao was expressionless from beginning to end. After he finished speaking, he shouted in a low voice, "How dare you? Who gave you the courage to slander the future heavenly consort? As a disciple of the Sky Pillar sect, instead of working hard, you slander your fellow disciples behind their backs. This kind of despicable behavior is unbearable." Chapter 386. From now on, you'll just be a servant disciple. Bai Wuqian was stunned when he heard Long Yunxiao's angry roar. He thought that when he reported the news to the emperor about the relationship between Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, the emperor would be furious. As the honorable emperor of imperial court, it was humiliating to have his future heavenly concubine taken away by another man. Under normal circumstances, the emperor would definitely take back Yun Yao for the sake of his reputation. He would use forceful methods to punish Ji Tianqing, and he might even eliminate Ji Tianqing. This was exactly what he wanted. After he was demoted to a servant disciple, he became the laughingstock of Sky Pillar faction. His reputation was ruined. The unparalleled humiliation and hatred had already caused his mind to become somewhat twisted. Even if he could not get Yun Yao, he would never let Ji Tianqing have her. However, he did not expect that the emperor would not be angry. Instead, he scolded him. The emperor's words were like an imperial edict to Sky Pillar faction. If the emperor said that he would be a servant disciple for the rest of his life, he could only be a servant disciple for the rest of his life. From this moment on, the rest of Bai Wuqian's life was completely ruined. He was stunned. He looked at the emperor in disbelief. He was so ashamed that he almost vomited blood. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't understand. When the emperor heard that Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were in love with each other, wouldn't he fly into a rage? While Bai Wuqian was still in a daze, Long Yunxiao's expression was indifferent. He shouted in a cold voice, "What are you still standing here for? Get out!" Bai Wuqian came back to his senses and said in fear, "Please calm down, Emperor. Everything I said just now is true, there is no falsehood. Emperor, I was persecuted by Ji Tianqing." Before Bai Wuqian could finish, Long Yunxiao glanced at General Li. General Li immediately understood. He grabbed Bai Wuqian by the collar and dragged him out of the room. Bai Wuqian struggled hard but could not break free from General Li's grip. His body was thin and weak. In front of the tall and burly General Li, he was like a little chick. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. General Li carried him out of the room, passed through the courtyard, and threw him outside the palace gate with a bang. Bai Wuqian's face was covered in dust from the fall. He was humiliated to the extreme. Fortunately, it was late at night and no one saw his sorry state. He struggled to get up from the ground, brushed off the dust on his body, and looked at the palace gate with a ferocious expression, his eyes surging with rage. He clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. He gnashed his teeth in anger. The hatred and resentment in his heart could not be washed away even with all the water in the world. Damn bastard. What bullshit, Emperor, you deserve to have your sweetheart snatched away. He roared in his heart and cursed hysterically. I was kind enough to report the news to you. Not only did you not thank me, you even demoted me to a servant forever and ruined my life. Bastard. Ji Tianqing is a beast, and so are you. All of you will die a horrible death. Bai Wuchen stood outside the gate of the Milky Way Palace. After a long time, he left with an ashen face. On the other side, General Li had already returned to Long Yunxiao's room. Long Yunxiao was deep in thought, expressionless. General Li cupped his hands and said, Emperor, based on Bai Wuchen's reaction, he didn't seem to be lying. Why did you punish him like this? Long Yunxiao furrowed his brows as his lips curled into a disdainful sneer. Of course I know that Bai Wuchen is right. Yunyao and Ji Tianqing are indeed a little too close. However, I have my own plans. How can I allow a treacherous villain like Bai Wuchen to tell me what to do? He inverted right and wrong in front of me and slandered Ji Tianqing. It's all because he hates Ji Tianqing but can't avenge him. So, he wants to use me to deal with Ji Tianqing. Huh, such a treacherous villain. He thinks he's smart and wants to use me. What a joke. After hearing his words, General Li was suddenly enlightened. He was immediately convinced and said, Your Majesty is indeed wise. The dirty thoughts of those ordinary people can't escape your eyes at all. Long Yunxiao waved his hand expressionlessly. Let's not talk about this person. Let's get down to business. General Li cupped his hands and asked seriously, Emperor, how do you plan to resolve the grudge between the Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect? Long Yunxiao said unhurriedly, previously, Sect Master Chu of the Sky Pillar sect had already secretly reported the detailed reasons to me. Sect leader Chu suspects that the remnants of the demon clan have infiltrated the Tianjin sect and bewitched the Tianjin sect leader to stir up the conflict and hatred between the two sections. General Li nodded in agreement. With a grave expression, he said, just as the imperial tutor warned, the demon qi in the Tianjin region is surging. There must be remnants of the demon clan causing trouble. That's right. Long Yunxiao nodded slightly and said in a serious tone, I have been ordered to take charge of the situation in the Tianjin region. My main goal is to eradicate the remnants of the demon clan in the Tianjin region. As long as the remnants of the demon clan are eliminated, the grudge between the Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect will be resolved. General Li thought for a moment and asked, Emperor, what should we do next? Investigate the movements of the demon clan first. Long Yunxiao nodded and ordered in a dignified voice, General Li, take out the heavenly dragon plate now and deduce the aura of the demon clan. I want to see how many remnants of the demon clan are hiding in the star ancient realm. How dare they be so rampant in the territory of the human clan? This general obeys. General Li cupped his hands and accepted the order. He quickly took out a square golden disc array from his space ring. The golden disc array was made of an unknown material. It was dark gold in color, and there were divine dragons engraved on its frame, as well as many array patterns and patterns. General Li used a secret technique and poured his majestic true yuan into the heavenly dragon plate. The entire disc array rapidly expanded into a huge disc array that was 5 meters long and 5 meters wide. The disc array was pitch black and empty. However, when General Li formed a seal with both hands and used a secret technique, the disc array lit up with a dark gold brilliance and condensed into a light screen. Countless patterns and lines appeared on the light screen, outlining numerous mountain peaks, mountain ranges, rivers, as well as vast and boundless forests and grasslands. After a short few minutes, a complete image appeared on the light screen. It was the complete map of the star ancient realm. General Li continued to use the secret technique and used the heavenly dragon plate to detect the aura of the demon clan. Long Yunxiao stared at the map calmly and waited patiently. After about 100 breaths of time, General Li finished using the secret technique. The map of the heavenly dragon plate immediately changed. 2 areas on the map lit up with black light and condensed into dark fog. One of the fog was very dense and was located slightly south of the center of the map. The other fog was lighter and was located in the east of the map. The light-colored black fog meant that the devil chi was weaker, and the strength of the devil clan was weaker. Chapter 387. On the heavenly profound dragon plate, 2 balls of black mist gently surged. Long Yun Shao stared at the map for a while before a cold smile appeared on his handsome face. He, as expected, there are demon remnants causing trouble. One of the balls of demonic mist is actually near the Sky Pillar sect. How audacious. After saying this, he looked at the thickest ball of demonic mist in the middle of the map and asked, General Li, where is that ball of demonic mist? General Li stared at the map for a while before cupping his hands and reporting, Emperor, this general has investigated the Star Ancient Realm yesterday and has some understanding of it. The ball of demonic mist is located in a city in the Star Ancient Realm called Spirit Flame City. Cultivators from all walks of life gather in Spirit Flame City. Most of the people in the city are inextricably linked to the 8 great sections. Moreover, Spirit Flame City is protected by the Grand Heaven Origin Array and is usually hidden. People from the 8 great sects must have a token to enter. After listening to General Li's explanation, Long Yun Shao had a plan in his heart. He ordered in a dignified tone, General Li, tomorrow morning, this ruler will leave the Sky Pillar sect and personally head to Spirit Flame City to eradicate the demon remnants hiding in the city. You will stay in the Sky Pillar sect and cooperate with Sect Master Chu's search. You must find the demon remnants near the Sky Pillar sect. General Li's expression immediately changed as he quickly cupped his hands and said, Emperor, you must not do this. You are the Emperor of the Imperial Court and your body is priceless. How can you risk your life to eliminate the demon remnants? Leave this matter to this general. You can stay in the Sky Pillar sect and command. Before leaving the Imperial Court of the Central State, the Imperial Tutor had solemnly instructed him to protect the Emperor's safety no matter what. Now that the Emperor was going to Spirit Flame City to personally eliminate the demon remnants, how could he not be worried? Long Yun Shao knit his brows and said with a solemn expression, General Li, this lord came to the heavenly stellar region with the heavy responsibility of exterminating the remnants of the demon race. How can I hide in the sky-bearing sect and be protected? General Li knew that he could not dissuade him, so he changed his words and said, Emperor, if you insist on going to Spirit Flame City, this general must go with you. No need. Long Yun Shao waved his hand and revealed a confident expression. He said proudly, I was born with divine veins and heavenly thunder sacred body. No filthy chi can contaminate me. With this lord's strength and means, ordinary devil generals and devil kings can't do anything to this lord. General Li was still worried and wanted to persuade him a little more. However, Long Yun Shao had already made up his mind. He gave the order in a firm and resolute tone. General Li couldn't say anything more. He could only cup his hands in obeisance and leave the room. The next morning, Long Yun Shao walked out of the Empyrean River Palace and went to the White Cloud Palace to look for Yun Yao. At this time, Yun Yao was on the roof of the White Cloud Hall. She was sitting on a jade praying mat, facing the cliff where the sea of clouds was surging. She was meditating and cultivating. She was wearing a moon-white long dress, and her long black hair was draped behind her back. She was tied into a bun with a jade hairpin. She looked fresh and refined, and her temperament was otherworldly. Wisps of white mist lingered around her. It was as if she was sitting on top of the clouds and cultivating. She really looked like a fairy from heaven. Long Yun Shao looked at her graceful figure, and his eyes became very gentle. He said in a gentle tone, Yao Yao, you came to Yunzhong so early to meditate and cultivate qi. Yun Yao ended her cultivation and opened her eyes. However, she didn't look back. She said in a cold voice, "I was meditating here last night. Why would I come early?" Long Yunxiao was a little embarrassed. He knew that Yun Yao was still angry about what happened last night. However, he didn't know that the reason why Yun Yao was restless and couldn't cultivate last night wasn't because of him, but because of Ji Tianqing's kiss. Long Yunxiao was silent for a moment. He didn't mention what happened last night, so as to avoid the two of them becoming more embarrassed. He said seriously, "Yao Yao, I came to find you this time because I need your help with something." After saying that, he stared at Yun Yao, waiting for her reaction. However, Yun Yao was still sitting on the futon with her back facing him. He couldn't tell what her expression and attitude was. Long Yunxiao continued, "The imperial tutor once observed the sky and divined the secrets of heaven. He predicted that the chaotic situation in the Tianjin region must be caused by the remnants of the demon race. Last night, I also used a secret technique to investigate. There are indeed remnants of the demon race hiding in the ancient star realm, and they are plotting against the Sky Pillar sect. In my opinion, as long as the remnants of the demon race are eliminated, the enmity between the Tianjin sect and the Sky Pillar sect will be resolved. The situation in the Tianjin region will also stabilize. I have already found out that there are remnants of the demon race hiding in Yanling City. I will personally go to Yanling City to eliminate the demon race. However, this matter is of great importance. I need your guidance and assistance." After he finished speaking, Yun Yao finally reacted. She stood up and turned to look at Long Yunxiao. She said expressionlessly, "Since the emperor is looking for me for official business, Yun Yao naturally won't dare to disobey. I will definitely assist the emperor in eliminating the demon race." Yun Yao's attitude and tone were very indifferent. She looked like she was going about official business. Although Long Yunxiao was slightly embarrassed, Yun Yao agreeing to accompany him to Yanling City made him happy. He was also full of anticipation for the upcoming trip to Yanling City. However, Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment. She added, "Since the remnants of the demon race are hiding in Yanling City, I have a suggestion. I hope the emperor will consider it. I am quite familiar with the ancient star realm, but I have never been to Yanling City. Coincidentally, junior brother Ji Tianqing has been to Yanling City before, so he is more familiar with the situation in the city. If the emperor wants this plan to go smoothly, why not bring junior brother Ji Tianqing along? He will definitely be of great help." Long Yunxiao immediately frowned, and the joy in his heart immediately dissipated. He originally wanted to use this opportunity to drag Yun Yao to accompany him to Yanling City. During the process of eliminating the demon race, he could also spend some time alone with Yun Yao and cultivate some feelings for her. However, he did not expect that Yun Yao seemed to have seen through his intentions. She found a reasonable excuse to bring Ji Tianqing along. "Damn it! I have to bring Ji Tianqing along again. Is it going to be 3 people traveling together again?" Long Yunxiao muttered to himself. He was a little upset in his heart. However, he did not show any displeasure on his face. He nodded calmly and said, "In that case, for the sake of the successful completion of the plan to eliminate the demon race, I have no objections." Seeing that he had agreed to this matter, Yun Yao did not say anything else. She left the roof and returned to the palace. She sent a maid to Tianqing's courtyard to pass the message. Then, she went to the Sky Pillar Palace to report this matter to the sect master, Chu Tiansheng. When Chu Tiansheng learned that the emperor was going to Yanling City to eliminate the demon race, he was naturally filled with worry. However, he could not dissuade him. He could only nod and agree to this matter. He also reminded Yun Yao to be careful. Half an hour later, Ji Tianqing also rushed to the White Cloud Palace and met up with Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao. After Yun Yao explained the situation to him, he naturally agreed without hesitation. Then, the 3 of them left the Sky Pillar sect and set off for Yanling City. Chapter 388. Long Yunxiao originally wanted to release the double-headed golden dragon and use it as a mount to rush to Spirit Flame City. Spirit Flame City was more than 2,000 miles away from the Sky Pillar sect. With the double-headed golden dragon's speed, they could reach it in 4 hours. However, Yunyao weighed the pros and cons and advised him not to release the double-headed golden dragon. After all, the double-headed golden dragon was too big and powerful. It was very eye-catching. The three of them were heading to Spirit Flame City because they had an important mission. They had to search for traces of the demons and eliminate the remnants of the demons. If they rode the double-headed golden dragon and rushed over with great fanfare, they would definitely alarm the other party and alert the enemy. Long Yunxiao felt that what she said made sense, so he dismissed the idea of riding the double-headed golden dragon. Thus, the three of them rode Yunyao's spirit beast, the white crane, and rushed to Spirit Flame City at a moderate pace. The three of them stood on the back of the spirit crane and faced the howling wind. They looked down at the mountains and rivers below and remained silent. Although no one mentioned what happened last night, the three of them were well aware of certain things. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Of course, Ji Tianqing's expression did not change as he remained silent. In fact, he was in a very good mood. Occasionally, he would be distracted and recall the charming scene from last night. Spirit Flame City was divided into 4 districts according to their location. The East District Market was the territory of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop's owner. It was also the most prosperous district in the city and an important trading area. In comparison, the West District was much more dilapidated and looked like a slum. The Old West District was full of squat houses and narrow, dirty streets. Most of the people walking around were dressed in tattered clothes and had a wooden expression. They looked unkempt and dirty. In some dark and dirty alleys, beggars in ragged clothes or pitiful people with wounds all over their bodies could be seen lying on the side of the road. Outside of some of the old taverns and grocery stores, some ugly, mentally deranged lunatics would often pop up, running around and cursing. Compared to the other bright and prosperous districts in the city, the West District was lifeless and filled with the aura of decay and death. Most of the beggars, thieves, and scoundrels in the city were gathered in this district. Of course, the poor people who were sick but had no money to seek medical treatment also gathered in the West District, struggling at death's door or waiting for death. Many years ago, there was a rumor in Spirit Flame City that the Western District was a deserted land of death. It was shrouded in the shadow of the devil and was gradually corroding and decaying. The people living in the city would never step into the West District for no reason. Even normal people would mysteriously disappear after entering some of the creepy places in the West District. Even those who were lucky enough to survive would become mentally deranged lunatics or pitiful wretches riddled with scars. And all of this was intensifying year by year, and it seemed to be getting more and more intense. Ordinary citizens and martial practitioners were both wary and curious about the Western District, but they did not dare to investigate the reason. There were only a few major forces in the city. Perhaps they knew some inside information, but they all pretended not to know. They tacitly guarded their own territories and would not step into the Western District. Under such circumstances, there were many rumors and slanders in the city, making the Western District even more mysterious and terrifying. At the end of a certain street in the depths of the Western District, there was an old and decaying house called Parasol Tree Courtyard. This old house occupied an area of 1,000 square meters. A few decades ago, it had been the residence of a wealthy man and had flourished for a time, with a flourishing population. However, on a rainy night 60 years ago, the wealthy man's family of more than 30 people, along with nearly 100 servants and guards, all mysteriously died in one night. From then on, this house was abandoned and became a famous haunted house. In recent decades, haunted events had frequently occurred in Parasol Tree Courtyard, scaring passers-by into insanity or mysteriously disappearing. Even in the clear day, the house was shrouded in invisible dark clouds, appearing eerie and terrifying. Over time, the name of the haunted house spread far and wide, and no one dared to casually approach it. Although it was daytime, the sky was gloomy and dark, with a light drizzle falling from the sky. The door of Parasol Tree Courtyard was tightly shut. The vermilion door's paint had long since peeled off, revealing the dark iron. There was an old plaque on the door frame, with the words Parasol Tree Courtyard written on it. It hung crookedly on the wall, half of it drooping down to block the door. In the courtyard behind the door, there were a few bare trees, and the ground was covered in a thick layer of fallen leaves and dust. The doors and windows of the rooms and corridors around the courtyard were old and decaying, covered in cobwebs. If one looked closely, they would discover palm-sized spiders, scorpions, and all kinds of poisonous insects hidden in the fallen leaves and dust. On the old and decaying beams and door frames, as well as in the dark corners of the walls, there were often colorful snakes coiling around. Originally, no one should have lived in this haunted house. But in the depths of the house, in a secret room made of black stone, two soft voices came from it. The light in the secret room was dim, the air gloomy and cold, and the air was filled with the stench of decay and blood. Two figures were whispering to each other in the room. One of them was more than 3 meters tall and as muscular as a giant. He had a head full of long red hair, and his body was covered in dense purple hair. He wore a necklace of bone teeth around his neck. His body was naked, and only a black python apron was wrapped around his waist. His entire body exuded a bloodthirsty killing intent. There was no doubt that this person was the Blood Demon King. The person who was standing beside him and conversing with him in a low voice was surprisingly a stooped old woman. This old woman was short and thin, like a 1-meter-tall monkey. She wore a black robe and a cloak, and in her hand was a crooked walking stick. At the top of the walking stick were 2 flat snake heads that were constantly swaying left and right, spitting out their tongues. Under the black cloak, her withered face was covered in thumb-sized pustules and pits, looking extremely sinister and terrifying. In addition to the Blood Demon King and the black-robed old woman, there was also a stone table in the room. On the table was a half-meter-tall purple pagoda. The purple pagoda had 9 floors, and each floor was rotating, flashing with a faint purple light. The 9 floors of the pagoda rotated at different speeds and directions, appearing extremely messy, but there was a unique pattern to it. The purple light from the pagoda was reflected on the walls of the secret room, like a light screen, showing an image. In the image, there were 3 young men and women riding on a white spirit crane, flying through the sky. Seeing this scene, the black-robed old woman curled her toothless mouth and let out a hoarse sneer. He 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 he. The prey is coming toward us. The Blood Demon King also revealed a bloodthirsty sneer, clenching his fists, and said, just in time. This king has not drunk the blood of humans for a long time. These little bastards dare to come to Flame Spirit City to find this king. This king will not let them return. Chapter 389. Without a doubt, the image displayed by the 9-story purple pagoda was of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, who were thousands of miles away. The Blood Demon Lord stared at the 3 of them in the image, his eyes fixed on Ji Tianqing. His eyes were filled with bloodthirsty intent. Granny Ghost, that kid is very important to me. According to the High Priest's report, that kid seems to have obtained the heavenly astral bead and is closely related to Kenshin. I need your help to find out if that kid has the heavenly astral bead or not. Granny Ghost looked at Ji Tianqing in the image and nodded gently. How dare these 3 juniors come to Flame Spirit City? They really don't know what's good for them. At this point, Granny Ghost paused and asked in a puzzled tone, but why have you been looking for the heavenly astral bead for the past 100 years and are willing to do anything for it? The Blood Demon Lord hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, I've investigated it before. It said that a drop of Kenshin's divine blood is sealed in the heavenly astral bead. If I get the heavenly astral bead, I can offer it to His Majesty the Demon King and use Kenshin's divine blood to restore His Majesty the Demon King's vitality. Moreover, Kenshin's inheritance can save us demons, allowing us to cultivate like normal people and not turn into hideous monsters. Granny Ghost was stunned for a moment and suddenly grinned. That's a big problem. The true form of you demons is really too ugly. Ha ha ha, the Blood Demon Lord lowered his head and glared at her. He said in a low voice, "Aren't you ugly?" Granny Ghost shook her head and said in a playful tone, "I was also a great beauty in the past. Otherwise, how could I have mesmerized you? How could I have made you kneel before me?" The Blood Demon Lord rolled his eyes silently and didn't comment on that. Moreover, looking at Granny Ghost's current appearance, he didn't want to say anything more. Granny Ghost naturally understood that. She said in a slightly emotional tone, "Sigh, it's a pity that in order to obtain more power and master godlike techniques, some sacrifices must be made." When the Blood Demon King heard the complicated tone in her words, he immediately felt the same way and calmed down. He bent down and patted Granny Ghost's shoulder. He said in a low voice, "Granny Ghost, don't think too much. Let's get down to business." Granny Ghost nodded and took out a handful of withered yellow straws from her wide and greasy sleeves. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that they were 16 simple-looking scarecrows, each the size of a palm. Granny Ghost placed the 16 scarecrows on the table in a row, and then took out 16 dark yellow talismans from her sleeves. She held a talisman between her left index and middle fingers while waving the snake-headed walking stick with her right hand. Streaks of green light shot out as she chanted a secret technique. Life is full of calamities and deep enmity. Death is difficult to resolve as a lonely soul. Now, I've been ordered to break through the void and turn into a vengeful spirit to avenge myself. After that, she stuck the talisman in her left hand onto a scarecrow. Suddenly, the talisman ignited with a dark green flame, enveloping the scarecrow as it flew out of the secret room and landed in the courtyard outside. Swoosh! The scarecrow that was enveloped by the flame immediately turned into a 2-meter-tall skinny man in a black robe, standing motionlessly in the courtyard. This skinny black-robed man's body and face were hidden in the black robe, as if he was engulfed by the darkness and could not be seen clearly. The only thing that could be seen was a pair of green light spots in the black robe. They looked like the black-robed man's eyes, but also like 2 balls of dark fire. Granny Ghost used her secret technique again and stuck a talisman on the second scarecrow. Swoosh! The second skinny black-robed man appeared in the courtyard, standing motionlessly, emitting a cold aura of death. Then, as Granny Ghost kept using her secret technique, more and more black-robed men appeared. The third, the fourth, the fifth. After a short while, the 16 scarecrows were stuck with talismans and used her secret technique, turning into 16 black-robed men. Granny Ghost used her left hand to cast a spell and shook the snake-headed walking stick with her right hand, as if she was giving some kind of order. Suddenly, the 16 motionless black-robed men jumped out of the courtyard, passing through the streets and alleys like ghosts, and sped out of the city. After the 16 black-robed men left, Granny Ghost put away her shriveled left hand and said, "All right, let's wait here for the good news." The Blood Demon King witnessed the process of her casting and could not help but grin. "Granny Ghost, I haven't seen you for many years. Your soul curse secret technique is getting more and more exquisite." Granny Ghost chuckled and said with a dry voice, It's just a small trick. Let's wait for a good show." It was dusk, and the sun had already set. Night was about to fall. The white crane spirit beast flew continuously for 10 hours and finally crossed more than 2,000 miles, arriving near Yanling City. The spirit crane was circling above a grassland in the dusky sky. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Long Yunxiao were standing on the back of the spirit crane, looking down at the grassland. Long Yunxiao raised his eyebrows and looked at Yun Yao in front of him. He asked, "Have we arrived at Yanling City?" Before Yun Yao could answer, Ji Tianxing explained, "The grassland below us is the entrance to Yanling City. Yanling City is usually covered by a large array, so it's impossible to see it." Long Yunxiao nodded and did not say anything. After a while, the spirit crane circled a few times in the sky and landed on the grassland with a raging gust of wind. The three of them jumped off the spirit crane's back and landed on the grassland. Yunyao cast a secret technique and put the spirit crane into her jade pendant. Ji Tianqing stood in the lush grassland and looked around, looking for the entrance stone tablet. Yunyao and Long Yunxiao were silent and secretly looked around. The light was dim, and the grassland was dead silent. There was a faint trace of coldness. Ji Tianqing looked around and saw the entrance stone tablet. It was just 100 meters away. He was about to bring Yunyao and Long Yunxiao over, but at this moment, more than 10 wisps of fire suddenly appeared in the grassland behind him. Swoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, more than 10 skinny black-robed men appeared out of thin air on the empty grassland. Every black-robed man was cold and dead. They were exuding a cold aura of death, as if they were evil spirits from hell. They appeared silently and did not slow down at all. They pounced on Ji Tianqing as fast as the wind. Although the black-robed men did not have any weapons in their hands were black and sharp claws. They were slender and sharp like daggers. They were not human hands at all. The 16 black-robed men immediately surrounded Ji Tianqing. They reached out their cold and sharp claws and grabbed at his vital points. At that moment, Ji Tianqing only felt a cold wind blowing on his face. His body was as cold as ice. Yunyao and Long Yunxiao also sensed that something was wrong. Their expressions changed immediately, and they reminded him. Tianqing, be careful. Chapter 390. Just as Yunyao and Long Yunxiao opened their mouths to warn him, Ji Tianqing had already retreated 10 meters away. Swoosh! He brushed past a few black-robed men and narrowly avoided the siege of more than 10 black-robed men. Although a few black-robed men's sharp claws had scratched his robe and hair, he was not injured. However, he was not injured. There were only a few cuts on his white robe. Only then did Ji Tianqing see clearly that there were a total of 16 black-robed men. Moreover, the black-robed men's height, appearance, and aura were exactly the same. It was extremely strange. Swoosh! 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 The 16 black-robed men's attacks all missed, but they immediately reacted and turned around to pounce on Ji Tianqing in unison. Their speed was even faster than before. This time, Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He immediately activated his majestic true essence and released 3 golden sword rays. He performed the first move of the flying star sword technique. Thousand Feather Blade. The 3 golden sword rays carried a sharp and domineering aura and attacked those black-robed men as fast as lightning. Swoosh! 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 The 3 sword rays split into 9 and stabbed more than 200 black-robed men in the blink of an eye. The dazzling sword rays covered an area of 20 meters and illuminated the dark sky. Under the illumination of the golden light, Ji Tianqing finally saw clearly that the eyes of the black-robed men were filled with emerald-green flames. His body suddenly shook, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. These black-robed men are not human. At the same time, 6 black-robed men who were not covered by the sword rays pounced over like ghosts and launched a siege without fear of death. Ji Tianqing was about to perform the flying star sword technique to block the attacks of the 6 black-robed men. At this time, Yunyao and Long Yunxiao had already rushed to his side. Long Yunxiao raised his hand and slapped out a huge flaming palm, bursting with the power to destroy the heaven and earth, slapping towards the black-robed men. With a muffled bang, 2 black-robed men were hit by the flaming palm and burned on the spot. In the blink of an eye, the 2 black-robed men were burned to ashes and scattered on the grassland. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was even more certain that these black-robed people were not humans, but more like ghosts or puppets. At this moment, Yun Yao and Long Yun Shao attacked at the same time and smashed the 4 black-robed men who had rushed to the front. After the 4 black-robed men collapsed, they spontaneously combusted and turned into black ashes that scattered across the grassland. In the blink of an eye, only 10 of the 16 black-robed men were left. The 10 black-robed men were stabbed by the 1,000-feather blade over 1,000 times, and their fates were too horrible to endure. 6 of the black-robed men were smashed into pieces by the sword light. After a burst of fire, they turned into black ashes. Among the 4 surviving black-robed men, one of them seemed to be afraid of the battle. With a swoosh, he dived into the grass and disappeared. The other 3 black-robed men did not know the difference between life and death, and rushed towards Ji Tianqing without any regard for their lives. The result was obvious. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Long Yun Shao casually attacked and smashed the 3 black-robed men into pieces and burned them to black ashes. 15 of the 16 black-robed men were destroyed, and only one of them escaped without a trace. Ji Tianqing and the others did not chase after him. They lowered their heads to examine the black ashes on the grass, hoping to find clues from them. After a while, Yun Yao spoke first, "There's no need to investigate. The 16 black-robed men just now are not living people. Someone used some kind of secret technique to create puppets with wraiths." Ji Tianqing and Long Yun Shao revealed a look of understanding. "I see. No wonder they were so ghastly." During the battle just now, Ji Tianqing used his spiritual consciousness to investigate the black-robed men's backgrounds. Unfortunately, he did not detect the black-robed men's strength and realm. He only detected the ghastly ghost Qi. He frowned and said with a serious face, "I don't know who wants to deal with us. They used wraiths and secret techniques to create puppets, and they all have the strength of the 7th level of the Tongxian realm." Long Yunxiao's face was also a little gloomy. He shouted in a dignified tone, "It's most likely the damned demon clan. They found out about our whereabouts and set up an ambush here. I didn't expect that the cruel and bloodthirsty demon clan would not only cause trouble in the Central Plains, but also in the territory of the human race." Yun Yao pondered in silence for a while. Then, she shook her head and said, "It's too early to make a conclusion now. This kind of secret technique to create puppets with wraiths should be some kind of incantation. Not only the demon clan is proficient in it, but some evil sects and forces also know how to use it." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and said, "Senior sister is right. This is a key clue. We can investigate from the people who are proficient in incantation." Yun Yao also nodded and said, "Fortunately, there are very few people who are proficient in incantation. As long as we investigate with all our strength, it shouldn't be difficult to find the truth." Long Yun Shao could not help but feel a little jealous when he saw the 2 of them echoing each other and maintaining the same point of view. However, he did not show it. He quickly suppressed those distracting thoughts and focused his attention on the investigation and the mission to exterminate the demon clan. Not long after, night fell. Ji Tianqing hurriedly led Yun Yao and Long Yun Shao to the side of the black stone tablet in the grassland. He took out the atlas badge and placed it on the black stone tablet. Then, he silently injected his true essence. The stone tablet immediately lit up with a silver light and emitted a powerful formation fluctuation. Soon, Flame Spirit City's great protective formation was activated. The scene in front of the 3 of them changed. An ancient black city appeared out of thin air on the originally empty grassland. The enormous city gates were tightly shut. The 3 of them walked together toward Flame Spirit City's gates. At the same time, in the haunted house in the western district of Flame Spirit City. Whoosh! A skinny black-robed man suddenly emerged from the ground and appeared in the dark secret chamber. Granny Ghost and the Blood Demon King had been waiting quietly in the secret chamber. When he suddenly saw the black-robed man appear, the Blood Demon King's eyes immediately revealed a strong sense of anticipation. "Granny Ghost, quickly take a look at the results." Granny Ghost's left hand formed a seal and her right hand shook the snake-headed walking stick, casting a secret spell. Suddenly, the black-robed man's ghostly fire eyes flickered violently, as if he was conveying some kind of message. Granny Ghost silently sensed for a while. Then, she gently shook her head and sighed. Those three little bastards are quite strong. The phantom puppets could not find the results and were all scattered. As she spoke, she formed another seal and shook the snake-headed walking stick to cast a secret spell. The black-robed man suddenly twisted and turned back into a scarecrow with a whoosh. He quietly lay on the stone table. The Blood Demon King stared at the scarecrow with a look of deep disappointment. Suddenly, he saw a faint trace of black on the yellow scarecrow. What is this? He frowned in confusion and instinctively looked down. Only then did he realize that there was a strand of black hair on the scarecrow. He reached out and twirled the strand of black hair. He muttered to himself, a strand of hair on the puppet's body. Whose hair is this? Hearing this, Granny Ghost's gloomy eyes suddenly emitted a faint green light. Chapter 391. The Blood Demon Lord was a little disappointed. But when he heard Granny Ghost's words, hope rekindled in his heart. Granny Ghost, do you have any ideas? Granny Ghost grinned and sneered. Hee, leave it to me. Then, she took the strand of hair and placed it on the 9-story purple pagoda. She made a hand seal with her left hand and shot out wisps of green light into the 9 Souls demonic pagoda. The demonic pagoda immediately sped up and emitted purple flames. The strange purple flames wrapped around the strand of hair and kept burning. Then, a surprising scene appeared. The seemingly weak strand of hair was not burned by the purple flames and was still intact. Moreover, the black hair danced in the purple flames, and its color gradually changed. After a few breaths, the black hair turned golden and emitted a faint golden light. Granny Ghost sneered and said in a low voice, "This strand of hair is very strange. It must have been nourished by a very powerful bloodline. That kind of powerful bloodline is not something that an ordinary human can have." When the Blood Demon Lord heard her words and felt the faint special aura in the hair, his expression changed immediately. The hair did not melt in the fire. Such a miraculous power, I think only the Sword God bloodline can achieve. This strand of hair must belong to Ji Tianqing. He must have fused with the Kenshin blood in the heavenly star bead to have such a powerful bloodline. At the thought of this, the Blood Demon Lord was enraged, and his face was distorted. Damn you, little bastard. He actually got the Kenshin blood. I must catch him, devour his body and all his blood, and take back the Kenshin bloodline. The Blood Demon Lord clenched his fists, and his eyes were filled with bloodthirst. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Long Yunxiao were walking on a street in Yanling City. It was the time to light the lanterns, and the streets were all lit up. There were very few people on the streets, and only some restaurants and gambling houses were bustling with activity, making it seem lively and clamorous. Ji Tianqing and the other two seemed to be aimlessly walking around the streets and alleys, observing the city's environment. In fact, the three of them were secretly releasing their spiritual senses to investigate the aura of the demons, looking for clues. Yun Yao's heavenly spirit sacred body was very sensitive to the auras of different races. Long Yunxiao also had a treasure that could detect the auras of the Devil Clan. Even so, after searching for 2 hours, the three of them were still unable to find any clues about the whereabouts of the demon race. Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao both sensed that the aura in this spirit flame city was extremely chaotic, and some areas were extremely filthy. Trying to find the hidden demons in Spirit Flame City was no different from finding a needle in a haystack. Seeing that it was already late into the night, Flame Spirit City gradually quieted down. Ji Tianqing and the other two had no choice but to temporarily stop their search. At the end of a street, under a dim tree, the three of them discussed their next plan in low voices. Long Yunxiao frowned and said, "We can't keep searching like this. Although this spirit flame city is not big, there are all sorts of people here, and the auras of different races are chaotic. The demons hiding in the city are very strong. Their whereabouts and auras are very well hidden. It will be very difficult to find them in a short time. Yunyao nodded slightly and looked at Ji Tianqing. She asked, "We can't keep searching like this. We must use the curse technique as a clue and start investigating. Junior brother Tianqing, you've been to Spirit Flame City before. Do you know where we can ask for information?" Ji Tianqing answered truthfully, "There's a place in the city called the Octagon Tower. It specializes in selling information. However, it's already late at night, and the Octagon Tower is already closed. We can only ask tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Long Yunxiao raised his eyebrows, a hint of worry in his eyes. "We're out in the open, while the enemy is in the dark. We must move quickly, lest something unexpected happens." Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing immediately had an idea. With a serious expression, he said, "Besides the Octagon Tower, there's another place where we might be able to get information. Come with me." After that, Ji Tianqing led Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao to the East City Market. The East City Market was the most prosperous area in Spirit Flame City. Even though it was late at night when there were few pedestrians, there were still many shops in the market that were open with lights on. After Ji Tianqing led the two into the East City Market, they went straight to the Heavenly Eagle Casino. The magnificent Heavenly Eagle Casino was as brightly lit as always. Countless gamblers were having a good time, and there was a constant buzz of noise. As soon as the three of them entered the main hall of the casino, a middle-aged man in black came to greet them. Ji Tianqing remembered that this person's surname was Tian. He was a deacon in the casino. He did not beat around the bush and directly told Deacon Tian the purpose of his visit. He asked to see Manager Lei. Deacon Tian also recognized him. He knew that he had won the challenge 3 months ago and met the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino as he wished. He had also made a fortune for the Heavenly Eagle Casino. Therefore, Deacon Tian nodded and agreed without hesitation. However, Deacon Tian only allowed him to meet Manager Lei alone. Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao had to wait in the lounge. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing was led by Deacon Tian to a palace in the depths of the casino to meet Manager Lei Qianjun. They had not seen each other for several months. When Lei Qianjun saw him, he could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then, he greeted him with a hearty laugh. "Little brother, we haven't seen each other for 3 months. Your cultivation has improved and your strength has increased tremendously. Congratulations." Ji Tianqing also cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Manager Lei, I trust you have been well since we last met." The two of them exchanged a few pleasantries and then sat down. Lei Qianjun smiled and asked, "Little brother, is there something you want to see our master this time?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Manager Lei is indeed wise. I do have something to ask the owner. I would like to ask for some information." "Since you just want to ask for information, there is no problem. Come with me." Lei Qianjun nodded happily. Then, Lei Qianjun led Ji Tianqing to the residence of the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. This time, Ji Tianqing met the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino in his study. The owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino, whose hair and beard were all white, was wearing a purple brocade robe. He was sitting in front of a desk, looking through the accounts. After hearing Lei Qianjun's report, he put down the account book in his hand and turned to Ji Tianqing. He asked in a dignified voice, "Little guy, what information do you want to know?" Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and said calmly, "Owner, I would like to ask if you know anyone in the city who is proficient in incantation arts." "Incantation arts?" The owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino frowned as a light flashed in his eyes. He glanced at Lei Qianjun and ordered in a deep voice, "Manager Lei, you can leave for now. Guard outside the study and don't let anyone come near." Manager Lei bowed and left the study, closing the door behind him. Chapter 392. Only Ji Tianqing and the owner of the Heavenly Eagle District were left in the study. The owner of the Heavenly Eagle District frowned at Ji Tianqing and asked in a low voice, "Little fellow, why did you suddenly ask about curses? Did you run into some trouble?" "That's right." Ji Tianqing did not hide anything and explained, "My friend and I were attacked by a group of black-robed men outside Spirit Flame City. Those black-robed men were not humans but puppets formed from vengeful spirits and curses." Hearing this, the owner of the Heavenly Eagle District's brows knitted tightly together and a bright light flashed in his eyes. He was silent for a moment and looked at Ji Tianqing seriously. He asked in a low voice, "Little fellow, do you know that vengeful spirits and curses are taboo in Spirit Flame City? If I tell you that you might lose your life if you continue investigating, will you still investigate this matter?" Seeing the owner of the Heavenly Eagle District's reaction, Ji Tianqing understood that the person who used the cursed puppets to attack him must be very powerful and made the owner of the Heavenly Eagle District fearful. However, he still nodded without hesitation and said, "I will." The owner of the Heavenly Eagle District looked at him deeply and his lips curled into a playful smile. "Huh, little fellow, you're getting more and more interesting. Since you're not afraid of death, I'll give you a clue. As for whether you can investigate thoroughly and whether you'll lose your life because of this, it has nothing to do with me." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Thank you, owner, for granting my wish." The owner of the Heavenly Eagle District raised his brows and said in a low voice, "There are 4 districts in Spirit Flame City, East, South, West, and North. My East District and the North and South Districts of the other 2 overlords are more prosperous and prosperous. There will definitely not be any demons and monsters hiding there. Alright, that's all I have to say. I have nothing else to say." With that, the owner of the Heavenly Eagle District waved his hand, indicating that Ji Tianqing could leave. Ji Tianqing memorized the owner's words and understood his meaning after pondering for a moment. "Thank you for your advice, owner. I'll take my leave now." Ji Tianqing bowed to the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop and left the study. Director Lei personally sent him off and only parted ways at the entrance of the gambling house. The owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop was still seated in front of the table. He frowned and pondered for a moment before muttering to himself. "This kid has a connection with the ghost realm of the West City. I'm afraid there will be a good show to watch soon." At the same time, Ji Tianqing left Sky Eagle Casino with Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao. The 3 of them walked on the dark and deserted street. Seeing that there was no one around, Long Yunxiao asked, "Ji Tianqing, have you heard anything useful?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded and said solemnly, "Let's go to the West District and start the investigation there." Long Yunxiao didn't ask for the specific reason and followed Ji Tianqing to the West District. An hour later, the 3 of them had traversed more than half of Spirit Flame City and arrived at the Western District. It was already the middle of the night. The entire Spirit Flame City was silent and had fallen into a deep sleep. The 3 of them had just entered the West District and they realized that something was wrong. The 3 of them stopped at the entrance of an old and dirty street and looked around with solemn expressions. Under the dim night sky, the entire street was as dark as ink. Not a single light could be seen. Although there were rows upon rows of houses and buildings within a few hundred meters in all directions, they were all dilapidated. Moreover, there were no lights or signs of human habitation in those old and dilapidated houses. They were filled with a cold and deathly stillness. Yun Yao frowned and said in a low voice, "This area is like a ghost town. It's filled with a cold and deathly aura and a strong demonic aura." Long Yunxiao nodded solemnly and said, "Since Yao Yao can sense a strong demonic aura, this should be the place." Ji Tianqing's sharp eyes observed the surroundings and reminded them in a low voice, "This place is very strange. Everyone should be careful." The 3 of them were on high alert as they walked forward. The rustling sound of their footsteps was extremely obvious in the deathly stillness of the night. Wherever the 3 of them passed, faint rustling sounds could be heard from the old houses and courtyards on both sides of the street. Ji Tianqing used his spirit sense to investigate and saw that many poisonous snakes, scorpions, centipedes, and all kinds of poisonous insects were crawling out of those pitch-black houses and courtyards. Not only that, but there were also some hazy white and black figures in some of the houses and courtyards. They were faintly discernible as they drifted through the houses and courtyards. If a timid person was in such a gloomy environment and saw such a terrifying scene, they would definitely be scared witless. 15 minutes later, the three of them walked along the old and dilapidated street and stopped at a crossroads. Old and pitch-black streets extended in all four directions of the crossroads. The three of them released their spirit sense to investigate their surroundings and found that the situation was a little strange. Ji Tianqing frowned and said, "Something's wrong. The streets on all sides of this crossroad seem to be exactly the same." Yunyao nodded and said, "Not only are the streets the same, but the houses on both sides are also the same. There are many poisonous insects, snakes, ants, and ghosts hiding inside." Obviously, she had also used her spirit sense to investigate those ghostly figures hiding in the darkness. Long Yunxiao raised his eyebrows and a playful sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said in a deep voice, "Hee, there's actually such a gloomy ghost town hidden in the city where the human race lives. This lord wants to see what kind of fiend or ghost dares to run rampant like this." His tone was sonorous and powerful, and his whole body faintly exuded an awe-inspiring righteous aura. It was precisely because his heavenly thunder sacred body exuded a pure yang aura that those snakes, insects, and ghosts didn't dare to show up easily, let alone approach. Ji Tianqing looked around and observed for a moment before he found some clues. "If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid we've already entered a maze. No matter which street we go along, we'll be circling around in the maze and we'll never be able to get out." Long Yunxiao raised his hands and formed a mysterious incantation. He waved his hands and drew arcs in the air, performing a secret technique. Heavenly Thunder Heart of Five Thunders, mysterious secret technique, Earth surging astral fire, heaven holding magic eye. As he muttered, a purple brilliance surged between his hands. He wiped his eyes, and his pupils immediately turned dark purple. Suddenly, his eyes became deep and mysterious, and his eyes were sharp and filled with righteous aura. He looked around and immediately saw thousands of light veins faintly appearing in the night sky. They were as dense as a spider web, condensing into a maze. There were also wisps of dark green flames floating in the night sky. In the dark corners of the surrounding streets, as well as in the depths of the ground, there were countless white skeletons hidden. Even the slowly wriggling venomous snakes and insects in the houses on both sides of the street were transformed from gray skeletons and ghosts. Seeing this scene, his face suddenly changed, and he said in a serious tone, "There's indeed a maze here, and it's a heaven prime maze. The area within a radius of 1,000 meters is covered by the maze. Who knows how many skeletons and ghosts are buried in the old houses and in the depths of the ground. The other party must have expected that we would come here, so they set up this maze in advance, waiting for us to walk into the trap." Chapter 393. With Long Yunxiao's strength, realm, and status, he wouldn't care about normal dangers. For him to have such a serious expression and feel that it was very troublesome, it must be an extremely dangerous situation. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both understood this. Their hearts also became heavy. Yunyao drew her cold moon sword. Her true essence was surging inside her body. She was on high alert, ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time. Ji Tianqing didn't have the black dragon sword, but he also activated the true essence inside his body and condensed a few rays of golden light in his palm. He was ready to release a powerful sword aura at any time. As for Long Yunxiao, he had already drawn a golden sword after observing the surroundings with his Dharma eyes. It was a heavenly origin grade divine weapon called the Nine-Cloud Sword. The hilt of the sword was shaped like a dragon's head. The 2-inch wide blade was flashing with faint electric arcs. The three of them stood at the center of the intersection with their backs to each other. They looked at the dark sky around them with sharp eyes. Suddenly, Long Yunxiao shouted, "Watch out, they're coming." As his voice faded, the sound of something breaking through the air came from the darkness around them. In the next moment, countless white figures appeared out of nowhere in the darkness. They flew across the night sky like a gust of wind and pounced on the three of them. Every white figure was wearing tattered white clothes. Their messy, long hair was loose. Their faces and feet couldn't be seen clearly. They didn't walk on the ground. They flew across the night sky like ghosts towards the three of them. Ji Tianqing saw clearly that these white ghosts didn't have feet or faces. They all had sharp claws that were as white as paper. They didn't have the slightest bit of vitality. They were emitting a cold aura of death. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Countless white ghosts swarmed out from all directions and surrounded the intersection. Some of them flew out from the depths of the street, some of them dashed out from the dilapidated houses, and some of them crawled out from the ground. There were also some exceptionally tall ghosts that crawled out of the well. In just a few breaths, more than 100 white ghosts had pounced on Ji Tianqing and his companions. They waved their claws and attacked. Swish! Swish! The spectre's pale claws and long, sharp black nails pierced through the air like swords and shrieked. The three of them were besieged by numerous white ghosts, and they did not hesitate to use their martial skills to launch a counterattack. Thousand Feather Blade. Ji Tianqing released 3 golden sword auras, which instantly split into 9 and enveloped an area of 20 meters in front of him. Swish! Swish! The night sky within a radius of 20 meters was illuminated by the dazzling golden light. This area was also filled with fierce and domineering sword light. As long as the ghosts were enveloped by the sword light, they were instantly torn into pieces and turned into pieces of white bones that scattered on the ground. Yunyao formed a sword seal with her left hand and held the cold moon treasured sword with her right hand. She waved her sword and slashed out 63 rays of cold light. The sword light formed 9 plum blossoms and attacked the dozen or so ghosts. Peng peng peng, after a series of muffled sounds, many of the ghosts were killed and turned into a pile of bones. Long Yunxiao's attack was the most domineering. Purple lightning constantly surged out of his left palm, and he struck out balls of lightning with his palm. As long as the white ghosts were hit by the balls of lightning, they would let out shrill screams and burst into purple flames on the spot before turning into black ashes. He waved the 9-cloud sword with his right hand and slashed out purple lightning arcs that covered an area of 20 meters. Many of the white ghosts that were hit by the purple lightning arcs would explode and be burned into black ashes by the pure yang qi. The three of them fought together and used all their strength to fend off the ghosts that pounced from all directions. They did not dare to relax at all. Although the combat strength of the white ghosts was only equivalent to a martial artist of the 7th or 8th level of the Tongxian realm, they were not flesh and blood. They were not made of flesh and blood. They were not afraid of death and could fly in the night sky. They came and went like the wind and were very fast. These white ghosts were very difficult to deal with, and there were so many of them that it was as if they could never be killed. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing and the other two had killed more than 1,000 white ghosts. The ground was filled with grayish-white bones that piled up to half a person's height. Until now, there were no more white ghosts that appeared in the surrounding night sky. Only 3 exceptionally large ghosts were left. They were still flying in the night sky and fighting with Ji Tianqing and the other two. Not only were these 3 ghosts enormous, their strength was also exceptionally strong. They were comparable to a 2nd or 3rd level origin core martial artist. Compared to ordinary ghosts, the most obvious difference was that they all had a ghastly pale and hideous face. 2 balls of dark green flames flickered in their empty eye sockets. After the 2 of them exchanged over 100 moves, Long Yunxiao was the first to finish off his opponent. He relied on the heavenly lightning's sacred body's pure yang qi and was completely unafraid of the ghost's sharp claws and deathly cold attacks. He slapped the ghost's chest with his palm and sent it flying. Its entire body was ignited with purple lightning flames. Taking advantage of the time when the ghost screamed and fled, he waved the 9-cloud sword and slashed out a 10-meter-long purple lightning sword light. With a bang, the ghost was cut into pieces. In the blink of an eye, the 3-meter-tall ghost was burned into black ashes by the lightning flames and scattered on the ground. At this moment, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were still fighting with their opponents. Although their combat strength was slightly higher than the ghosts, they could only injure the ghosts. It was very difficult to quickly kill or destroy them. Moreover, the two ghosts were constantly striking out dark green flames and spitting out black deathly cold air. It was impossible to guard against. Ji Tianqing's left arm was burned by the dark green flames, and it was numb for a long time. His entire arm was unable to exert any strength. Fortunately, his bloodline strength was strong. After circulating his cultivation technique and recuperating for a moment, his left arm returned to normal. After Long Yunxiao finished off his opponent, he immediately went to help Yun Yao and killed the ghost in 3 to 5 moves. It was only at this moment that Ji Tianqing used Crimson Dragon Flash to completely kill the heavily injured ghost and turn it into bones that covered the ground. All the ghosts were killed and turned into white bones and black ashes that covered the ground. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly circulated their cultivation techniques to regulate their breathing. The fierce battle just now had consumed a lot of their cultivation techniques. Long Yunxiao looked into the darkness and hurriedly reminded them, "We can't stay here for long. Let's leave this place quickly. Otherwise, more ghosts and ghosts will attack us. Moreover, we have to investigate this formation as soon as possible and find a way to break it." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao both understood this point and hurriedly followed him to the street in the south. The three figures quickly disappeared into the darkness. Not long after they left, the piles of bones on the ground at the crossroads strangely gathered together. With a "kacha" sound of friction, the millions of grayish-white bones actually condensed into a huge bone dragon that was emitting dark green flames all over its body. The skeleton bone dragon was more than 20 meters long and more than 10 meters tall. It had 2 skull dragon heads and a pair of dragon wings made of white bones. After it condensed and took shape, it twisted its body a few times and flapped its white bone wings, flying in the direction that Ji Tianqing and the others had left. Chapter 394. In a dark courtyard house, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were observing the surroundings of the courtyard. Some poisonous snakes, ants, and ghosts that occasionally charged out from some rooms were easily killed by the three of them. Long Yunxiao utilized his Dharma eyes to observe for a moment before saying, "I've already investigated. There are the fewest ghosts hidden here, and it seems to be the foundation of the Grand Formation." Ji Tianqing shook his head instead and said with a calm expression, "No, this seems to be the foundation of the Grand Formation, but it's actually a void that was intentionally left behind by the person who set up the formation to deceive others. This heaven origin Grand Formation is extremely profound, and its true foundation is hidden extremely deep. Moreover, it's surely guarded by powerful ghosts and ghosts." Long Yunxiao couldn't help but glance at him when he heard this and asked, "You seem to be very proficient in the formation Dao." Ji Tianqing didn't try to be modest. He nodded silently. In fact, he wasn't just proficient in the formation Dao. His attainments in the formation Dao had already reached the Grandmaster level. Yun Yao added in a timely manner, "Junior brother Tianqing's attainments in the formation Dao can be called a Grandmaster, and he once broke a top-grade heaven origin Grand Formation before." Long Yunxiao's brows raised as a wisp of shock and surprise flashed in his eyes. He obviously didn't expect that Ji Tianqing was so young and only at the 3rd level of the Origin Core stage, but his attainments in the Formation Dao actually surpassed him by so much. He went silent for a moment before saying to Ji Tianqing, "Since it's like this, you're responsible for investigating this grand formation and looking for a way to break it. Ji Tianqing didn't have any objections and nodded. He thought for a moment before continuing, since this is a void that was intentionally left behind by the person who set up the formation, it's most likely a trap or ambush. It's better for us to leave as soon as possible. As soon as he finished speaking, Long Yunzhao's face went grim as a wisp of cold light flashed in his eyes. I'm afraid it's already too late. In the next moment, four tall and big black-robed figures emerged from a dry well in the backyard with swooshing sounds. These black-robed figures were not ghosts, but puppets formed by vengeful spirits and curses. They were much stronger than the specters. They streaked across the night sky as fast as lightning and rushed to the front yard, surrounding Ji Tianqing and the other two. Unexpectedly, not only did these puppets have ferocious and terrifying faces, their eyes flickered with dark green flames, they also held ancient and broken swords in their hands. Blue flames flickered on the blade and sword, exuding a cold aura of death, as if they were weapons from hell. The four black-robed puppets seemed to have intelligence. They spread out and surrounded the three of them. Their movements were uniform as they waved their swords and sabers, creating a sky full of blue flames. Swish! Swish! In an instant, the three of them were surrounded by blue flames, and the dark front yard was illuminated by the flames. Be careful! Long Yunzhao bellowed and took the lead in wielding the nine-cloud sword. He used the power of the heavenly thunder sacred body to launch a counterattack. His left palm shot out a fist-sized ball of purple lightning, while his right hand swung the sword, sending out purple lightning bolts that filled the sky. His entire body was bursting with a powerful pure yang energy. Instantly, violent gales blew within the front yard and swept out in all directions. Boom! A ball of purple lightning struck the black-robed puppet, blasting open a large hole in its chest, and its black robe was ignited with lightning flames. The ball of lightning descended into the corner of the courtyard, instantly collapsing half of the courtyard wall and blasting open an enormous deep pit on the ground, causing dust and dirt to spray out into the sky. The black-robed puppet suffered a heavy injury, yet it seemed as if it didn't notice in the slightest, and it pounced towards Long Yunzhao without any regard for its life. Long Yunzhao hurriedly swung the nine-cloud sword, instantly slashing out 19 violet lightning sword lights before blasting the black-robed puppet flying, and half of its body was broken. But even then, the black-robed puppet still didn't know pain, and it fearlessly pounced over once more. Long Yunxiao's brows knit tightly when he saw this scene, and his mood became even heavier. Both of you be careful. The strength of these four black-robed puppets is comparable to a 7th-level origin core stage expert, and they're extremely difficult to deal with. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's faces went grim, and their gazes became even more serious. The battle earlier had caused them to consume a great deal of true essence. With their current strength, it was utterly impossible for them to defeat a 7th-level origin core stage expert. Not to mention the opponent was a black-robed puppet, and it didn't have a body of flesh and blood, so its defense and speed were extremely formidable. Crimson Dragon Flash. Heavenly Star 5 Swords. Ji Tianqing released a 10-meter-long flaming sword light that fiercely charged towards a black-robed puppet with the might to pierce through everything. The black-robed puppet wasn't able to dodge in time and was struck by the Crimson Dragon Flash on the spot. Boom! Amidst a muffled bang, the black-robed puppet was blasted flying by the sword light. The black robe on its body burned with crimson-red flames, half of its arm was blasted into pieces, and a large hole was pierced open on its chest. But a large expanse of dark blue soul flames gushed out from its hands, and it instantly annihilated the crimson-red flames. It was even to the extent that it used its palms to clamp onto the enormous sword light, and after resisting it a few times, it actually crushed the crimson-red sword light into powder. Violent shock waves mixed with flames spread out towards the surroundings, and it blasted the surrounding houses to the point of collapsing and shattering, transforming them into rubble that covered the ground. Yin Yao's situation was practically the same as well. She swung the Frost Moon sword and slashed out 5 enormous sword lights, and it merely injured a black-robed puppet before being crushed by another black-robed puppet. The 3 of them resisted the attacks of the 4 black-robed puppets with all their strength, and they instantly felt as if they'd fallen into a quagmire and were unable to escape. 2 black-robed puppets entangled Long Yunxiao, whereas the other 2 black-robed puppets fiercely attacked Ji Tianqing and Yunyao, and they were beaten to the point of retreating repeatedly. The 3 of them were quickly forced to separate, and their situation became more and more dangerous. Along with the battle becoming more and more intense, the dazzling brilliance of true essence illuminated the night sky, and muffled bangs sounded out without end as the violent shock waves destroyed the house to the point of shattering. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao fought with the black-robed puppets for 100 breaths of time, and they were both injured. Yunyao was hit by a gust of black deathly cold energy, and she was sent flying a dozen meters away, falling into the rubble with blood flowing out of the corner of her mouth. Before she could escape from the rubble, a black-robed puppet had already pounced on her, and it slashed out a dozen dark blue sword lights, which enveloped the space above her head. She was about to be hit by the dark blue sword lights, and even if she didn't die, she would be seriously injured. At this moment, Long Yunxiao turned into a purple lightning and rushed over from the side, blocking in front of Yunyao. He swung his sword with all his strength, and the sword lights filled the sky, destroying the dozens of dark blue sword lights, and saving Yunyao in time. Meanwhile, Ji Tianqing and a black-robed puppet were fighting in the backyard. He was hit in the back by the black-robed puppet, and his whole body was enveloped by the dark blue soul fire, and he was ruthlessly smashed into a house, smashing several walls into pieces. Fortunately, when he was hit by the black-robed puppet's broken sword, a golden light shone on his back, and a golden battle robe appeared. The golden battle robe blocked the power of the slash, and he was unharmed. However, he fell into the rubble, and his body was buried by the rubble. His whole body seemed to be frozen, and he couldn't move. The eerie blue soul fire not only froze his fleshly body, but also nearly froze his soul, causing his consciousness to become muddled and blurry. At the moment of life and death, the Kenshin bloodline exploded with dazzling golden light, releasing a vast and mighty power that rushed through his body. When the dark blue soul fire met the Kenshin bloodline power, it was like ice meeting the sun, melting and disappearing instantly. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing returned to normal, and hurriedly climbed out of the rubble. He was looking around for the black-robed puppet, and then he saw an enormous bone dragon standing in the rubble in front of him. It was a bone dragon with 2 dragon heads and a pair of bone wings. Its 4 eyes were dark blue soul fire, and its body was surrounded by dark green flames, giving off an extremely powerful aura. It looked down at Ji Tianqing from above, as if it was an evil spirit dragon that had walked out of hell. Chapter 395. Ji Tianqing didn't expect that a spectral bone dragon would appear out of nowhere in the courtyard and appear in front of him without making a sound. The black-robed puppet that had attacked him earlier was standing beside the spectral skeletal dragon. Its posture was stiff, as if it did not dare to move at all. Seeing this, his pupils constricted and his entire body tensed up. One black-robed puppet was already very difficult to deal with. He could not kill it even after using all his skills. Now, another spectral skeletal dragon had appeared, and its strength was obviously several times stronger than the black-robed puppet. Even if he used all his trump cards, he might not be able to defeat the spectral skeletal dragon. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with it, the spectral skeletal dragon had already raised its huge white bone claw and slammed it down with the weight of Mount Tai. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing instinctively used the shadowless step and retreated to the side as fast as lightning. Bang! The huge white bone dragon claw brushed past him and slammed into the brick ruins with a loud bang. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the houses within a 100-meter radius collapsed and turned into ruins. A huge crater was formed in the ground, and densely packed gullies appeared around it. Dust and gravel flew everywhere, whistling through the night sky and hitting the nearby houses like hidden weapons. The surrounding houses were also affected, and they were on the verge of collapse from the violent shockwave. Ji Tianqing was lucky enough to escape the attack and was not hit by the spectral skeletal dragon's claw. But he was swept away by the violent shockwave, and his body was involuntarily sent flying more than 10 meters away, falling into the ruins. Amidst the crashing sounds, he smashed into the ruins, crushing many bricks and tiles into powder. He did not care about the dust on his body, and hurriedly got up from the ruins, turned around, and tried to escape. However, the spectral skeletal dragon had already rushed to his side. It raised a pair of gigantic white skeletal dragon claws and slammed them down at lightning speed with the power to destroy heaven and earth. The two white bone dragon claws covered an area with a 20-meter radius, and they instantly slammed into the top of his head, about to crush him into powder. At this critical moment, he could not dodge at all. He could only rely on the Kenshin battle robe to resist the attack of the white bone dragon claw. However, just as he covered his body with the Kenshin battle robe and was about to be hit by the white bone dragon's claw, a bolt of purple lightning came from the side. "Get out of the way!" Following an anxious shout, the purple lightning rushed to Ji Tianqing's side and pushed him more than 20 meters away, leaving the attack range of the white bone dragon claw. Almost at the same time, Long Yunxiao's figure appeared in the purple lightning. He raised his palms with all his might and condensed two enormous purple palms with purple lightning, blocking the two white bone dragon claws head-on. Boom! Amidst a deafening muffled sound, Long Yunxiao's lightning palm forcibly blocked the white bone dragon claw. However, he was also suppressed by the peerlessly terrifying power to the point that his back was bent, and his legs had completely sunk into the ground. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was stunned, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Long Yunxiao actually saved me at such a critical moment. He had the Kenshin battle robe to protect him. He did not need Long Yunxiao's help at all, and he would not be injured. However, he did not expect that Long Yunxiao would actually risk his life to save him. He felt both disbelief and doubt, and he could not see through Long Yunxiao's character. At this moment, Yunyao also rushed over and shouted anxiously, "Tianqing, come over quickly." Ji Tianqing saw that her face was pale and there was blood at the corner of her mouth. She was obviously injured. Moreover, the two black-robed puppets were attacking her from both sides. He quickly ran to Yunyao and joined forces with her to resist the attacks of the two black-robed puppets. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yunyao sent a voice transmission to him. "Tianqing, that's the spectral skeletal dragon. Its combat power is comparable to a powerhouse at the peak of the origin core stage. Only Long Yunxiao can deal with it." As Ji Tianqing fought with the black-robed puppets, he did not forget to look back at the spectral skeletal dragon and Long Yunxiao. He saw that Long Yunxiao was holding up the giant lightning palms, supporting the spectral skeletal dragon's giant claws. Dazzling lightning burst out from his body as he unleashed 120% of his power. He actually managed to push the spectral skeletal dragon back dozens of meters. Then, he held the nine-cloud sword with both hands and jumped 100 meters into the air. He slashed down a 100-meter-long purple lightning sword ray. 10,000 thunderbolts. The huge spectral skeletal dragon did not have time to dodge and was hit by the huge lightning sword ray. One of its wings was cut off, and countless bones flew out. Kaboom! Amidst the deafening noise, the 100-meter-long lightning sword ray slashed the ground. A 100-meter-long gully was formed on the ground, and countless cracks spread out in all directions. The dozens of houses nearby were all destroyed and turned into ruins by the violent shock wave. Obviously, Long Yunxiao was enraged and unleashed all his power. Before the spectral skeletal dragon could counterattack, he swung his sword and slashed out 3 lightning bolts that could split the sky and earth apart. The spectral skeletal dragon also raised its 2 dragon heads and spewed out blue soul fire that covered an area of 100 meters. Long Yunxiao and the spectral skeletal dragon engaged in a fierce battle that shook the sky and earth. The surrounding houses were all turned into ruins. Seeing that Long Yunxiao was not at a disadvantage, Ji Tianqing retracted his gaze and focused on the black-robed puppets. He unleashed all his power and unleashed his trump card to fight with the black-robed puppets. Water split. Mountain river smash. The 10-meter-long golden sword ray carried the power to destroy everything. It shattered the black-robed puppets into pieces and created many gullies on the ground. Yunyao also wielded the cold moon sword coldly and unleashed her trump card. Moonlight splendor. River of stars. The cold moon sword in her hand turned into a 10-meter-long moonlight sword ray and slashed at the black-robed puppets. The two of them worked together and cooperated well. It only took them 100 breaths to kill the two black-robed puppets. The two black-robed puppets completely collapsed and turned into pieces of bones on the ground. After dealing with the two black-robed puppets, the two of them didn't stop to rest. They hurried to help Long Yunxiao. Long Yunxiao had already beaten the spectral bone dragon until it was riddled with wounds. Its enormous body was badly damaged, and many holes had appeared. The three of them worked together to besiege the spectral skeletal dragon. They unleashed their strongest attacks and used all their power. 15 minutes later, the three of them finally shattered the spectral skeletal dragon and turned it into countless pieces of white bones. Of course, the houses and streets within 1,000 meters were also destroyed by the aftermath of the battle and turned into ruins. The battle was finally over. The three of them were temporarily out of danger. Ji Tianqing endured his exhaustion and weakness and searched carefully in the ruins. Finally, he found a formation base. The formation base was hidden deep underground, at the bottom of a dry well. It was a gloomy and cold cave. There was no danger in the stone cave. The three of them entered the stone cave and Ji Tianqing set up a defensive formation in the cave. Chapter 396. Time quietly passed in the dark, cold cave. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Long Yunxiao all sat cross-legged on the ground, silently circulating and adjusting their breathing. 8 hours passed, and it was the morning of the second day. During this time, the three of them did not encounter any danger, nor were there any ghosts or puppets that attacked them. Long Yunxiao's strength was the strongest, and he was not injured. He was the first to recover his strength and end his cultivation. After that, Yunyao also ended her cultivation and opened her eyes. Long Yunxiao looked at her with a face full of concern and asked gently, "Yao Yao, are your injuries okay?" Yunyao nodded. "I've already recovered. It's not a big problem." Long Yunxiao still wanted to say something, but Yunyao had already stood up and walked out of the cave. "Son of Heaven, you stay here and protect junior brother Tianqing. I'll go outside and investigate." Long Yunxiao was startled and said worriedly, "Yao Yao, it's too dangerous outside. You stay here, I'll go check the situation." Yunyao gently shook her head and said calmly, "It's already morning outside, and the bone spectre dragon has already been killed. What danger can there be? I want to investigate the aura of the demon race." "You can't help." Long Yunxiao was speechless, but he could not persuade her. He could only warn her, "Then you must be careful. If there's any danger, immediately retreat." "Amen," Yunyao responded and quickly left the cave. Half an hour later, Ji Tianqing's true essence had completely recovered, and he ended his cultivation. When he opened his eyes, he saw that there was only him and Long Yunxiao in the gloomy cave. "Son of Heaven, where did eldest senior sister go?" Long Yunxiao turned to look at him and said truthfully, "She's outside investigating the aura of the demon race." Ji Tianqing nodded silently. After a moment of silence, he said, "Thank you for helping me when I was attacked by the bone spectre dragon." Long Yunxiao leaned against the cold stone wall, closing his eyes to rest. He calmly said, "It's nothing." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, "Why did you save me in such a dangerous situation? If I'm killed by the spectral bone dragon, wouldn't that be exactly what you want?" He believed that if it were anyone else, they would not have helped him out like Long Yunxiao. Long Yunxiao opened his eyes and looked at him. He said in a serious tone, "Ji Tianqing, you and Yao Yao are secretly in love. You and I are rivals in love. Of course I don't like you. However, I am definitely not the kind of person who would do anything to achieve my goals. I will take you seriously and see you as my opponent. I will defeat you fair and square and take back Yao Yao's heart. Besides, if I leave you to die and you get killed by the spectral skeletal dragon, Yao Yao will definitely look down on me." Although Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao were rivals in love, when Ji Tianqing heard Long Yunxiao's words, he could not help but feel deep respect. He secretly thought, Long Yunxiao is indeed worthy of being the imperial court son of heaven. His breadth of mind is unmatched by ordinary people. This guy is a strong opponent. After a moment of silence, Ji Tianqing asked another question that had been bothering him. "Son of heaven, with your status and power, what kind of woman can't you get? Eldest senior sister is cold to you. Why do you insist on pestering her?" Long Yunxiao raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Yes, with my status, no matter who I choose to be the heavenly concubine, it will be her luck and glory. Everyone in the world respects me as the imperial court son of heaven. When I was young, everyone followed me and gave in to me. No one dared to go against my will. However, Yao Yao is different from the rest. She is the most special person. She is probably the only one who disdains me and treats me coldly." Speaking of this, his eyes revealed a deep look of reminiscence. He continued in a playful tone, "The first time I saw Yao Yao was at her father's 100th birthday banquet. She was only 12 years old at that time, but she was already beautiful and elegant. I still remember that day. She was wearing a long dress with a moon and a frozen star and a pair of phoenix boots. She was quiet and elegant, just like a little fairy. I used the birthday banquet as an excuse to get close to her. I pestered her and wanted to talk to her. However, she completely ignored me. She would rather have a little spirit bird as her companion than to even look at me. From that day onwards, I made up my mind to marry her in this life and let her see my sincerity and loyalty." Ji Tianqing listened silently and felt that it was a little funny. Everyone followed Long Yunxiao, only Yunyao was cold to him. So he didn't like other women and swore to marry Yunyao as his concubine. Why does it seem like he's angry? He wanted to ask Long Yunxiao a few more questions about Yunyao, but Yunyao came back and quickly walked into the stone cave. Long Yunxiao's eyes immediately fell on Yunyao and asked with concern, "Yao Yao, did you encounter any danger? Did you find anything?" Yunyao glanced at him. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had finished his cultivation, she said, "The sky is bright. There are no ghosts wandering outside. I just checked. The demon's aura is outside the formation. It seems to be hiding in the depths of the West District." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said in a serious tone, "In that case, let's break the formation as soon as possible. After leaving this maze, we can find the demon." Long Yunxiao nodded in agreement. "There's no time to lose. Let's act as soon as possible." Therefore, the three of them used their strengths and explored the foundation of the formation in the stone cave to find a way to break it. Ji Tianqing abandoned all distracting thoughts and focused on the stone wall of the stone cave. He formed a seal with both hands and used his formation skills to explore the foundation of the formation with full concentration. After 2 hours, he found some clues. Through the structure of the foundation of the formation and the network of the formation, he concluded that this maze formation used the two formations Frost Soul Shadow and Smoke Net 100 changes. Although the person who set up the formation did not use vital essence and spiritual chi of heaven and earth, but gloomy ghost chi and bloody devil chi, and made some changes to the two formations. But as the saying goes, no matter how many changes there were, the essence of the formation remained the same. Ji Tianqing started from the foundation of the formation in the stone cave and began to reverse analyze it. He identified the network of the formation and the other foundations of the formation. After 4 hours, he used his formation skills to break the formation. Long Yunxiao and Yunyao still didn't know much about this great array, but under his guidance, they quickly understood the crux of the matter. The two of them also helped him break the formation, so the speed of breaking the formation increased a little. After 12 hours, an entire day had passed. It was time for night again. At this time, Ji Tianqing finally succeeded in breaking the formation with the help of Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao. Of course, breaking the formation was not destroying it. He could only open a passage in the formation, but he could not completely destroy it. Chapter 397. Under the dim curtain of night, Ji Tianqing and the other two left the formation and returned to an old street. There were no stars in the night sky. There was only a crescent moon shining with a weak moonlight. The strange thing was that the moonlight had a hint of dark red. The street was very old. There were many cracks in the ground. Everywhere was covered with dust and fallen leaves. Piles of rotten debris were piled up. The houses on both sides were also dilapidated. Everywhere was covered with dust and spider webs. Countless poisonous snakes, scorpions, and insects were hidden. The air was filled with the aura of decay and death. The three of them used their spiritual senses to investigate. There was no aura of living people within 1,000 meters. At this time, Yunyao looked at the end of the street and said in a grave tone, "I found it. The source of the devil energy is there." Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao followed her gaze and vaguely saw an old house at the end of the street. In the darkness, a faint yellow light was faintly revealed in the house. "Let's go and take a look." Long Yunxiao clenched his 9-cloud sword and took the lead to walk towards the end of the street. His tone and eyes contained a hint of expectation, revealing a strong fighting spirit. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao followed closely behind. They were full of vigilance and vigilance. Rustle, 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 the three of them stepped on the dust and fallen leaves on the ground, making a slight sound. It was very obvious in the silent night. Before long, the three of them arrived at the end of the street and stopped in front of the house's gate. The dilapidated house occupied an area of at least 1,000 meters. There were several courtyards. The vermilion gate with peeling paint was tightly shut. The two huge lion head knockers were also suffused with dark green rust. 2 vermilion black lanterns were hung on both sides of the gate. It was unknown how much dust and spider webs and mud had accumulated on them. A dark brown plaque hung on the lintel, half of it drooping in front of the gate. There were 3 mottled and blurry words on the plaque: Wudong Courtyard. Long Yunxiao released his spiritual sense and covered an area of 200 meters. He silently investigated the situation in the courtyard. Carrying the 9-cloud sword, he walked to the gate first and was about to kick it open. But at this moment, the lanterns hanging on both sides of the door suddenly lit up with a dark red light. The strange thing was that the hazy blood light did not illuminate the area in front of the door. Instead, it condensed into a huge ghost face. It was an old woman with disheveled hair. Her face was dry and wrinkled like tree bark. Her eyes were deeply sunken and she had a wide mouth. She looked at Long Yunxiao and grinned, revealing a strange and sinister smile. "Keek keek. You 3 little fellows, this old one has been waiting for you for a long time." The ghost-faced old woman's voice was hoarse as she let out a cold laugh. However, this was not a voice that spoke. Instead, it was a telepathic message that rang out directly in the minds of the three. Long Yunxiao subconsciously took a step back. Holding the 9-cloud sword, he was about to slash at the ghost face. At this moment, the blood light on the lantern on the right side of the door condensed into a huge face. It was a broad and ferocious man's face. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes. His mouth was like a bloody mouth, and he looked very ferocious. He looked at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao with a sneer on his face and said in broken human language, "Little bastards of the Sky Pillar sect, you really don't know what's good for you. You actually dared to come here." Ji Tianqing and the other two took a closer look and immediately recognized that this ferocious man was a demon. Long Yunxiao stared at the face of the demon. After a moment of careful observation, he frowned and his expression became serious. In the next moment, the red door automatically opened to both sides, letting out muffled creaking sounds. Ji Tianqing and the other two looked through the door and immediately saw two figures, one tall and one short, standing in the dilapidated courtyard behind the door. The black-robed figure on the left was very short, like a skinny monkey in a black robe. In his hand was a walking stick that was even taller than him. Two black snakes were coiled around the cane, hissing and flicking their forked tongues. The figure on the right was abnormally tall and burly. He was more than 3 meters tall and was as strong as a ferocious beast. This was a demon with long red hair. He wore a necklace of bone teeth around his neck and a black python apron around his waist. There was no doubt that these two figures were the Blood Demon King and Granny Ghost. The two of them looked coldly at Ji Tianqing and the other two outside the door. Their bodies were emitting a strong aura of death and bloodthirst. When Long Yunxiao saw the Blood Demon King's appearance, his expression changed, and a glint flashed in his eyes. Blood Demon King. It's actually him. Long Yunxiao recognized the Blood Demon King and immediately used his spiritual sense to remind Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. I didn't expect the Blood Demon King to come personally. He's a great demon who has been famous for 100 years. He has killed countless people in our territory. He's very powerful. With the strength of the three of us, we're no match for him. Long Yunxiao didn't expect that the demon hiding in Yanling City was the Blood Demon King. Before he left the imperial court and came to the Tianshan region, he had investigated the demon race. He had a certain understanding of the Blood Demon King and the Blood Demon tribe. The Blood Demon King was one of the best among the Sky Origin Realm experts. Long Yunxiao had just entered the Sky Origin Realm not long ago. He was no match for the Blood Demon King. At this moment, his heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cellar. He was extremely vigilant. When Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao heard the name, Blood Demon King, their expressions changed and became serious. Blood Demon King. He's the leader of the Blood Demon tribe, the father of the Blood Moon Infanta. For the past 100 years, the demon race has been wreaking havoc in the Tianshan region and Yangon region. They have killed countless human warriors under the orders of the Blood Demon King. He's the real Demon King, a cruel and bloodthirsty executioner. When the Blood Demon King saw the reaction of Ji Tianqing and the other two, he immediately grinned. He, little guys, don't you think it's too late to be afraid and regretful now? Tonight, I'll use your blood and souls as a sacrifice to teach the Sky Pillar sect a painful lesson. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and sent out a huge ball of blood light that enveloped the three of them. Swoosh! The dark red blood light that was so dense that it couldn't be dispersed turned into a blood net that covered the sky and the sun. It covered an area of 30 meters and covered the three of them. Invisible changes immediately occurred around Ji Tianqing and the other two. The night silently twisted, and the air seemed to have solidified. It was like a pool of mud that trapped the three of them and made it difficult for them to move. Get out of the way. Danger. Long Yunxiao and Ji Tianqing warned almost at the same time. They wanted to pull Yun Yao and escape to the sides. However, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were weaker. They had to put in a lot of effort for every step they took. Swoosh! Long Yunxiao could still move freely and was about to escape from the blood net's range. Chapter 398. Water Split. Ji Tianqing bellowed and released a golden sword aura that was 10 meters long. It slashed at the blood net that was falling from the sky. Moonlight Essence. Yunyao also waved her cold moon sword and slashed out a silver sword aura that was more than 10 meters long. It slashed at the blood net like moonlight. The two powerful sword auras instantly slashed at the dark red blood net that was falling from the sky, making two dull sounds. Bang! Bang! However, the two sword auras failed to break the blood net. Instead, they collapsed into pieces and were immediately swallowed by the blood net. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were about to be enveloped by the blood net. At the critical moment, Long Yunxiao stopped running. He unleashed all his strength and performed a unique skill with the nine-cloud sword. Thunder-splitting sky. He held the nine-cloud sword with both hands and poured endless true essence into it. A sword aura of purple thunder that was 20 meters long was condensed and slashed at the blood net. The purple thunder sword radiance sliced open a crack in the strange yet flexible blood web with a chi-la sound. The gap quickly expanded and spread to both sides. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a big hole. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao immediately jumped through the big hole and out of the blood net. In the next moment, the blood net fell from the sky and covered the gate and the walls of the house. After a series of hissing sounds, the whole gate and the red brick walls were corroded into black ashes by the blood net and fell to the ground. Furthermore, after the blood web landed on the ground, it corroded the stone floor until it was riddled with holes, revealing palm-sized gullies. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both felt scared and relieved. If they were enveloped by the blood net, their flesh and blood would be sucked dry and corroded into black ashes. We can't stay here for too long. Run! Long Yunxiao rushed over without hesitation. He pulled Yunyao and fled in the direction they came from. Ji Tianqing also hurriedly followed, using his shadowless steps with all his might, running as fast as lightning. In Wudong Courtyard, Blood Demon King and Granny Ghost both sneered. Hee, you want to leave after coming here? The Blood Demon King sneered and once again sent out 3 blood-red light beams towards Ji Tianqing and the other 2 at lightning speed. The blood-red beam of light pierced through the night sky and immediately transformed into 3 gigantic blood-red palms that slammed toward the 3 of them. Granny Ghost cast a spell with her left hand and waved the snake-headed walking stick with her right hand. She cast a secret technique and stomped the walking stick on the ground. Suddenly, the entire street outside the Wudong Courtyard collapsed with a series of cracking sounds. Dense cracks appeared on the ground, extending to both sides. The houses and mansions on both sides of the street crumbled into rubble and rubble, falling towards the middle of the street, trying to bury the 3 of them on the spot. Not only that, under the cracks on the ground, many ghosts condensed from white bones crawled out from the ruins of the houses and mansions on both sides. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced on the 3 of them. In an instant, the ground and mountains within a radius of 1,000 meters shook, releasing a gloomy ghost aura that soared into the sky, turning into a ghost domain. Long Yunxiao took the lead and rushed to the front, constantly waving his 9-cloud sword and slashing away the white bone ghosts that pounced on him from both sides. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao followed closely behind. Their figures dodged left and right, narrowly avoiding the collapsed brick ruins on both sides and the attacks of the skeletal ghosts. However, the 3 of them had only escaped 100 steps away when the Blood Demon King's 3 blood-red palms reached their backs. The speed of the blood-red palms was so fast that Ji Tianqing and Yunyao couldn't dodge them in time. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing's mind moved. A golden light lit up behind him, and the Kenshin battle robe appeared. He subconsciously hugged Yunyao and held her tightly in his arms, covering her body with the Kenshin battle robe. Before Yunyao could react, 2 blood-red palms with a radius of 5 meters hit her and Ji Tianqing with a loud bang. Bam! With a deafening muffled sound, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were sent flying at the same time. They rolled and smashed into the brick ruins on the side of the street. Long Yunxiao held the 9-cloud sword with both hands and released a thunderbolt that soared into the sky. He turned around and blocked the attack of the blood-red palms. Bam! The blood-red palms exploded with a bang, but he was also sent flying backward and fell on the street that was full of cracks. He was only slightly injured. He didn't have time to check his injuries and hurriedly ran toward Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing. Yao Yao. How are you? Are you hurt? Long Yunxiao's tone was full of anger and anxiety, and his eyes were faintly red. He quickly waved his palms and nine-cloud sword to push away the brick ruins that were piled up like a mountain. Finally, he pulled Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao out. Yun Yao was unscathed, but Ji Tianqing's face was pale, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The defense of the Kenshin battle robe was extremely strong. However, he was not completely protected by the battle robe while protecting Yun Yao. He was still injured by the blood-red palms. Long Yunxiao was relieved when he saw that Yun Yao was not injured. Yun Yao saw that Ji Tianqing's injuries were not light. Her eyes were full of anxiety and concern. She said in a somewhat reproachful tone, "Tianqing, protect yourself. Don't worry about me." Ji Tianqing wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve and hurriedly urged, "Now is not the time to talk about this. Let's run." The three of them stepped over the brick ruins and were about to continue running. However, there were more than a dozen white skeletons and ghosts condensed from bones from all directions. They pounced on them fearlessly. "I'll cover you. You guys run first." Long Yunxiao shouted in a low voice. He held the nine-cloud sword and rushed toward a few white skeletons. He slashed out a few huge purple lightning sword beams and smashed the white skeletons into pieces and burned them into black ashes. However, he was immediately surrounded by more than a dozen skeletons and ghosts. He waved the nine-cloud sword with all his strength and used his ultimate sword technique. He slashed out a sky full of thunder and lightning and blasted many skeletons and ghosts away. However, more skeletons and ghosts rushed out from all directions. There were also white ghosts floating in the air and puppets in black robes. They quickly surrounded them. "If we're going to leave, we'll leave together." Yun Yao shouted in a low voice. She waved the cold moon sword and stabbed out a sky full of cold sword beams, killing a few ghosts. Ji Tianqing also rushed toward the group of skeletons and ghosts like a gust of wind. He used the ultimate move of the Flying Star sword technique and launched a violent attack. However, the number of skeletons and ghost puppets was simply too great. Hundreds of skeletons, ghosts, and puppets rushed out from the underground and the ruins of houses within a radius of 1,000 meters. They all pounced toward them with murderous intent. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing, Long Yunxiao, and Yun Yao were surrounded by hundreds of ghosts and monsters. At the same time, the Blood Demon King and Granny Ghost also caught up with them. Both of them condensed a pair of black light wings and flew into the dark night sky. They looked down at Ji Tianqing and the other two from above and sneered ferociously and bloodthirstily. He, you three are really affectionate and righteous little bastards. Unfortunately, you are going to die soon." Chapter 399. With Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao's strength, no matter how many ghosts and ghosts there were, they were nothing to be afraid of. However, the Blood Demon Lord and Granny Ghost were undefeatable. Their strength and skills were too powerful and horrifying. Ji Tianqing and the other two were not qualified to fight them head-on. They could only run for their lives. After all, the Blood Demon Lord and Granny Ghost were Heaven Yuan cultivators who had been famous for hundreds of years. Their seniority was similar to Xiang Wuji and Chu Tiansheng. Bang! 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 In a series of dull sounds, Ji Tianqing and the other two unleashed sword radiance that covered the sky. The ghosts and ghosts around them were shattered into pieces, turning into white bones that scattered on the ground. The area within a 30-meter radius became clear and spacious. However, the three of them did not look relaxed. They raised their heads and looked at the night sky at the Blood Demon Lord and Granny Ghost. The three of them remained silent. Their eyes were filled with determination and determination. Long Yunxiao pursed his lips and said to Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao through his spiritual sense, I will hold them back. You two run for your lives. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao disagreed. They quickly advised, no. It's too dangerous. You are no match for them. We will not let you fight them alone. Long Yunxiao's face was as cold as ice. He shouted in a firm tone, stop fighting. This is the only way. Only in this way can we have a chance to escape. His tone contained an indisputable dignity, and it was resolute and decisive like steel. Then, a golden ball appeared in his left palm. It released a dazzling golden light that covered his entire body. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the dazzling golden light turned into a majestic golden armor that covered his entire body. This dark golden armor not only had a helmet, gloves, and boots, but also a pair of dark golden wings on its back. Not only that, there was a sharp and narrow black blade that extended from the left arm of the armor. It was giving out an extremely sharp aura. At this moment, Long Yunxiao was no longer the handsome, elegant, and graceful emperor of heaven. He had become a majestic and violent god of war on the battlefield. His entire body was giving out an earth-shattering aura and killing intent. I have the dragon teeth saber, 9-cloud sword, and god of war armor. You don't have to worry about me. Ji Tianqing, I will leave Yao Yao to you for now. You have to bring her out of here safe and sound. Long Yunxiao looked up at the Blood Demon King and Granny Ghost in the night sky. His tone was solemn as he threw down these two words. Then, he charged into the night sky without looking back. Swoosh! With a flap of his dark golden wings, he turned into a golden stream of light, swinging his sword at the Blood Demon King in the night sky. His slender and vigorous back exuded an indomitable and fearless aura. Ji Tianqing looked at Long Yunxiao's back with mixed feelings. He suddenly felt that it was a great honor to fight a fight's battle with him. Trust him and do as he says. Yun Yao looked at Long Yunxiao deeply before she pulled Ji Tianqing and ran forward. The two of them had just run 20 meters when they were surrounded by more than 20 skeletons, ghosts, and ghosts. Ji Tianqing immediately manipulated the Kenshin battle robe and turned it into a pair of golden wings. He flapped his golden wings and flew into the sky with Yun Yao in tow, rushing forward. However, the ghosts that were pouncing on him from all directions flew into the sky and surrounded him. He was flying in the sky with Yun Yao. There was nowhere for him to borrow strength, so he could not use much of his strength. Suddenly, the two of them were in a perilous situation. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to land on the ground and fight with the ghosts and ghosts. He no longer held back his strength. He put on the heavenly origin astral armor and the Kenshin battle robe and bravely attacked. Crimson Dragon Flash. Water Split. Shatter the mountains and rivers. Ji Tianqing turned into a ferocious beast in human form and rampaged through the ruins. All the ghosts and ghosts that tried to stop him were smashed into pieces and turned into broken bones on the ground. Yun Yao formed a sword seal with her left hand and waved the cold moon sword with her right hand. Her white robe fluttered in the wind as she performed her ultimate sword technique and killed all the ghosts and ghosts that came from all directions. The two of them struggled to fight their way through the ruins and escaped forward step by step. At the same time, Long Yunxiao was also fighting fiercely with the Blood Demon King and Granny Ghost in the dark night sky. He was like a dark golden god of war flapping his golden wings and flashing left and right in the night sky. He swung his sword and created a sky full of lightning. The dazzling lightning tore apart the dark night sky and bombarded the ground below. Many houses and buildings that were still intact within a radius of 1,000 meters exploded into ruins after being hit by the lightning swords. Rumble, 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 rumble. The earth trembled crazily, and huge gullies were carved out. The Blood Demon King and Granny Ghost kept shooting out blood light, blue soul fire, and green soul fire, which covered the night sky within a radius of 100 meters. The two of them showed their strengths and had endless attacking methods. The blood light condensed into giant palms, giant blades, and giant monsters, which poured down on Long Yunxiao like a flood. The blue soul fire and green soul fire condensed into giant ghost shadows. The dense rain of arrows, the fire pillars across the night sky, and even the giant flying birds, all attacked Long Yunxiao. Long Yunxiao knew that he was no match for the two of them, so he didn't want to fight them head-on. He relied on the strong defense of the god of war armor and his lightning-fast speed to dodge back and forth in the sky. Only when he found a chance did he perform his ultimate attack. The fight between the three Sky Origin stage cultivators was earth-shattering. The purple lightning, the red blood light, the blue soul fire, and the green soul fire mixed and intertwined with each other to create a splendid brilliance, which illuminated the ghost region within a radius of 1,000 meters. The violent shockwaves were like five-colored air waves. They spread out in circles and engulfed all the buildings and streets in the surroundings. Boom boom boom. The loud noise spread through half of Flame Spirit City and woke up countless warriors. That night, in the east, south, and north of Spirit Flame City, there were many experts secretly observing the battle in the west of Spirit Flame City. However, no matter which force they were from, they could only watch in the dark. They didn't dare to step into the west. Unknowingly, 15 minutes had passed. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao killed more than 300 ghosts and puppets along the way. He was protected by the Kenshin battle robe and star armor, so he wasn't hurt at all. Earlier, his internal organs were injured by the Blood Demon King, so he didn't need to take any elixirs to heal. The powerful and mysterious Kenshin bloodline had a nature-defying self-healing ability. He had already recovered from his injuries. However, the continuous fierce fighting had consumed a lot of his true origin. He had used half of his true origin, and his body was extremely tired. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead as he panted heavily. Fortunately, he and Yunyao had rushed almost 1,000 meters away. They were about to rush out of the ghost region and leave Parasol Garden. Unfortunately, the Blood Demon King sensed Long Yunxiao's intentions and saw that he and Yunyao were about to escape. He abandoned Long Yunxiao without hesitation and charged over without caring about anything else. Chapter 400. Little bastard, your flesh, blood, and soul belong to me. How dare you try to escape? You will definitely die today. The Blood Demon King roared with a murderous aura. His body turned into a blood-red light and streaked across the night sky. In the blink of an eye, he flew 1,000 meters away and arrived above Ji Tianqing's head. Long Yunxiao was also secretly paying attention to Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's movements when he was fighting with the Blood Demon King and Grandma Ghost. Seeing that Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were about to be out of danger, he was secretly happy and gratified. But in the blink of an eye, the Blood Demon King stopped fighting with him and pounced on Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. His heart immediately jumped, and he chased after him without hesitation. Blood Demon King. Your opponent is me. You evil demon, fight with me for 300 rounds. See how I chop off your head. Long Yunxiao's voice was as loud as a bell. He turned into a golden light and rushed towards the Blood Demon King, provoking him. However, how cunning was the Blood Demon King? How could he be provoked by him? The Blood Demon King turned a deaf ear to his words. He released a monstrous blood-red light that condensed into 12 giant blood-red swords and slashed at Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Long Yunxiao wanted to help, but it was too late. At this moment, Grandma Ghost chased after him with a sinister smile. She waved her snake-headed walking stick and shot out a green fire that covered the sky. It condensed into hundreds of skulls that enveloped Long Yunxiao's figure. Long Yunxiao was entangled and couldn't get away. He could only wave his sword and saber to resist the siege of the skulls. Hundreds of meters away, he could only watch as Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were drowned by the giant blood-red swords. Boom! 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 Amidst the deafening noise, the 12 giant blood-red swords hit the ground and covered a radius of 100 meters. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's figures were drowned by the blood-red swords. The ground within a radius of 100 meters was shattered into pieces, turning into an incomparably huge crater, with dust and stone fragments bursting out into the sky. The Blood Demon King stood in the night sky and looked down at the deep pit on the ground. His eyes were as gloomy and sharp as an eagle's. Although the power of his ultimate move was extremely terrifying, it was still not enough. However, his holy sense sensed that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were still alive. They had unexpectedly blocked the attack of the huge bloody sword. In the next moment, a golden stream of light jumped out from the bottom of the crater and rushed into the distance as fast as the wind. Within the golden light, Ji Tianqing was carrying the pale-faced Yun Yao as he ran for his life. His footsteps were somewhat staggered, and blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. It was obvious that he had been injured. The star armor could withstand the full power of a Yuan Dan expert, but it couldn't withstand a Heaven Yuan expert like the Blood Demon King. The Kenshin battle robe could withstand the attack, but it couldn't completely protect him and Yun Yao. Even though he had stood in front of Yun Yao and protected her in his arms when the 12 blood-red giant swords came crashing down, he had no regard for his own safety. However, he and Yun Yao had both been injured by the huge bloody swords. The monstrous demonic aura contained in the huge swords had already taken the opportunity to invade Yun Yao's body. It was wantonly destroying her bloodline and true essence, corroding her celestial spirit sacred constitution. Her celestial spirit sacred constitution was very special. It was very sensitive to the aura of various races. It was also because of this that her celestial spirit sacred constitution was easily corroded and destroyed by the demonic aura. Ever since she had started cultivating, she had to cultivate in the spirit moon hot spring every month to wash away the impurities and evil aura and maintain the purity of her celestial spirit sacred constitution's bloodline. At this moment, blood kept flowing out of the corner of Yun Yao's mouth. A faint black aura appeared on her pale face. That was caused by the demonic aura entering her body. Although she was still conscious, her consciousness was getting blurrier and her strength was extremely weak. Ji Tianqing sensed that her situation was extremely bad. He was immediately filled with anxiety and worry. He desperately used his potential to run wildly. His figure was like a stream of light as he crossed the ruins one after another. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind. No matter what, I have to take senior sister and escape from here. I can't let anything happen to her. However, when the Blood Demon King saw him and Yun Yao, he sneered and chased after them. Swoosh! The Blood Demon King flew across the night sky as fast as an aurora and landed on the ruins 30 meters in front of Ji Tianqing. Little bastard, die! The Blood Demon King shouted angrily. His figure turned into a bloody light and rushed in front of Ji Tianqing in an instant. He raised his huge fists and punched at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was holding Yun Yao in his arms and had no time to dodge or block. At this critical moment, he could only turn around and face the Blood Demon King with his back. Bam! Bam! The Blood Demon King's fists hit Kenshin's battle robe and sent Ji Tianqing flying. He drew an arc in the night sky and smashed into the ruins 30 meters away with a bang. He lay in the ruins covered in dust and spat out a mouthful of blood. If not for the protection of Kenshin's battle robe, the Blood Demon King's punch would have smashed him into meat paste. Yun Yao also fell to the side. Her injuries were even more serious. Her eyes were weak and lifeless, and she was about to fall into a coma. Blood Demon King strode over, his huge feet stomping on the ground, producing a series of muffled footsteps. He came in front of Ji Tianqing and stared at Ji Tianqing condescendingly. His eyes fell on Kenshin's battle robe. Kid, you didn't die after taking a punch from this king. This battle robe is very extraordinary. Tell this king, what treasure is this? The Blood Demon King sneered and said in a mocking tone. In his eyes, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were doomed to die. They were no different from corpses. Ji Tianqing endured the internal injuries and the stabbing pain all over his body. He secretly used the Kenshin bloodline to quickly heal his injuries. He gritted his teeth and stood up without saying a word. He held the seriously injured Yun Yao in his arms. The Blood Demon King frowned and a cold murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He slowly raised his right hand. A thick bloody light surged in his palm and burst out with a powerful devouring power. He manipulated the thick bloody light and condensed it into a huge bloody light vortex that enveloped Ji Tianqing. Kid, it's time for you to return your Kenshin bloodline to this king. The Blood Demon King shouted at Ji Tianqing with his spiritual sense. He wanted to use the bloody light vortex to devour Ji Tianqing's flesh and soul. He wanted to suck him into a skeleton and deprive him of his bloodline. Ji Tianqing subconsciously used the shatter of the mountains and rivers. He slashed out a huge golden sword aura and slashed at the bloody light vortex. Bam! The bloody light vortex trembled a few times. The huge sword aura that was 10 meters long collapsed into hundreds of pieces and was swallowed by the bloody light vortex. Ji Tianqing was also enveloped by the terrifying devouring power. He struggled hard but could not escape. His body involuntarily flew into the vortex. At this critical moment, a resounding, majestic dragon roar suddenly resounded in the night sky above everyone's heads. Roar! At the same time, a dazzling golden light lit up the sky and illuminated the entire West City district. A 1,000-meter-long double-headed dragon appeared in the night sky out of thin air. Its 4 huge dragon eyes stared at the Blood Demon King and exuded an extremely sacred aura. It swooped down from the night sky at lightning speed and waved its huge dragon claws at the Blood Demon King. Brothers who haven't voted yet, remember to vote. Chapter 401. The Blood Demon King was not prepared at all. He did not expect a dragon to appear out of nowhere. The two-headed golden dragon was too fast. He sensed something was wrong, but it was too late for him to dodge. In the next moment, the two-headed golden dragon descended from the sky. Its huge dragon claws slammed into him, covering an area of dozens of meters. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion reverberated in the night sky and spread throughout the entire Flame Spirit City. The destructive force of the impact blasted a deep crater with a radius of several hundred meters in the ground. The crater was densely packed with cracks. In that instant, the entire Spirit Flame City seemed to have experienced a massive earthquake as it shook and trembled violently. All the old houses in the West District collapsed and turned into ruins. Debris and dust flew into the sky and covered the entire West District, turning everything within a few thousand meters into chaos. The citizens of Flame Spirit City were awakened. They all ran out of their houses in fear and looked up at the sky above the West District. Amidst the smoke and dust that covered the sky, a gigantic golden Jiao dragon was flying away like a stream of light. No one saw that the golden dragon was holding a young man and woman in one of its front claws. After a long while, the earth-shattering explosion gradually dissipated. Granny Ghost, who was wearing a black robe, held a broken walking stick and descended from the night sky. She landed at the edge of the huge crater. Under her tattered black robe, only her right leg was left. Her left leg was gone. When the Blood Demon King was chasing after Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, she was responsible for keeping Long Yunxiao busy. In the end, the crazed Long Yunxiao used his trump card and broke her walking stick with a single slash. He even slashed her left leg with his saber. Her entire left leg had been chopped off and burned into black ash by the purple thunder astral fire. However, this level of injury was only a minor injury to her. In 3 to 5 months at most, she could use her evil secret technique to regrow her severed left leg. Granny Ghost stood at the edge of the crater. She looked at the pitch-black bottom of the crater and shouted angrily, "Blood Demon King, are you dead? Crawl out if you're not dead." The bottom of the pit was silent for a while before the sound of bricks breaking could be heard. The ruins shook violently, and an ugly, ferocious black beast that was over 100 meters long struggled to crawl out. It shook its head hard to get rid of the dust and debris around it. Only then did it crawl out of the deep pit with difficulty. More than half of the fin-like spikes on its back were broken. 3 of its 4 broad black wings were broken as well. From its back to the right side of its abdomen, there was a huge wound that almost tore half of its stomach open. Inside the deep and wide wound, rows of white bones could be seen. Dark purple blood was still gushing out. Seeing this scene, Granny Ghost couldn't help but tremble and gasp. "That damned flood dragon, how could it injure you so badly?" After the black beast crawled out of the deep pit, it lay on the ground and gasped for breath for a while. A pitch-black demonic mist gushed out of its body. A moment later, the hideous beast turned into a 3-meter-tall demon. It was the Blood Demon King. His head and face were covered in dirty blood. There was a huge wound on the right side of his abdomen. The white bones and internal organs were clearly visible. Puff, the Blood Demon King opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. With a ferocious expression, he roared in rage, "Damned bastards! One day, I will return to the Middle State and trample the bullshit Imperial Court." Granny Ghost glanced at him and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Stop bragging. Is the Imperial Court something you can mess with? Unless the Demon Emperor returns to the world. The ghost region that I have painstakingly built for decades is destroyed just like that. After tonight's battle, all the major forces in Spirit Flame City have been alarmed. There is no place for me here." Granny Ghost's tone was filled with grief, indignation, and unwillingness. She hated Ji Tianqing and the other 2 to the extreme. The Blood Demon King's voice was even more venomous. He shouted in a low voice, "Let's leave Spirit Flame City before daybreak and find a place to heal first. They let those 3 little bastards escape this time. They won't be so lucky next time." With that, he and Granny Ghost turned into black fog and ghost chi and disappeared into the dark night. They silently left the ruins of the West City. At the same time, in the night sky outside Spirit Flame City, the double-headed golden dragon was galloping high in the sky. Yunyao lay on the back of the golden dragon with her eyes closed. There were still traces of blood at the corner of her mouth. The black aura on her pale face was getting heavier. Her injuries were getting worse and worse. Her consciousness had also fallen into a coma and she was unconscious. Ji Tianqing sat beside her. He endured the weakness of his body and transferred the remaining true essence in his body into her body. However, it was to no avail. He had already taken off his starlight armor and Kenshin battle robe. He was wearing a tattered white robe and his body was stained with blood. He looked very miserable. The lack of true essence made his body extremely weak. The exhaustion of his physical strength also made him extremely tired. He could faint at any time. If not for the fact that Yunyao was unconscious and in a critical situation, he would not have been able to hold on. Long Yunxiao was also sitting beside Yunyao. He had already put away his divine battle armor and 9-cloud sword. His situation was not much better. His hair was messy, his handsome face and robe were stained with blood, and his true essence was almost depleted. Fortunately, although he looked miserable, his injuries were not serious. He stared at Yunyao. His eyes were filled with anxiety and worry. His fists were also tightly clenched. "Yao Yao, nothing must happen to you. We've already left Spirit Flame City. We'll send you back to treat your injuries soon. You must hold on." Long Yunxiao muttered softly. Unfortunately, the unconscious Yunyao could not hear him at all. After a moment of silence, he raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing. His eyes were sharp as he asked in a cold voice, Ji Tianqing, is this how you protect Yao Yao? I entrusted her to you. I told you to bring her away safely no matter what. What happened in the end? You're safe and sound, but she's seriously injured and unconscious. Ji Tianqing was silent. He did not want to explain, nor did he have the ability to defend himself. He did not care about his own safety and tried his best to protect Yunyao. He did not even hesitate to use his body to block the Blood Demon King's killing move. However, the Blood Demon King was too powerful. He was one of the best in the ethereal origin stage. He and Yunyao were only in the origin core stage. How could they block his attack? He was filled with hatred. He hated that he was not strong enough to protect Yunyao and kill the Blood Demon King. He. Ji Tianqing, oh Ji Tianqing. I really overestimated you. Long Yunxiao was filled with grief and worry. He was so angry that he laughed. He shook his head and said, I actually saw you as an opponent and even gave you a chance to compete fairly. What a joke. If Yunyao entrusted her life to you, you can't even guarantee her safety. How can you give her peace and happiness? Chapter 402. 2 hours later, the double-headed golden dragon flew back to the Sky Pillar sect. It was dawn at this moment, and the sky was just starting to turn white. During the journey, Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao had already used spirit stones to recover 20 to 30% of their true essence. The double-headed golden dragon landed on the red cloud peak and made a huge noise, immediately alarming Chu Tianqing and several guards. Ji Tianqing carried the unconscious Yunyao, hurriedly jumped off the dragon's back, and quickly ran to the palace where Chu Tianqing lived. Long Yunxiao also quickly put away the double-headed golden dragon and followed as fast as the wind. A moment later, Ji Tianqing arrived outside Chu Tianqing's secret room, and the black-robed guard immediately opened the door. Chu Tianqing had just finished his cultivation when he saw Ji Tianqing carrying the unconscious Yunyao into the secret room. His face immediately darkened, and he asked, Tianqing, what's going on? Ji Tianqing hurriedly placed Yunyao in the corner of the room, on an ice jade bed that was used for healing and cultivation. Master, we were searching for the demons in Spirit Flame City and encountered the Blood Demon King. Senior sister was seriously injured by the Blood Demon King, and the demon Qi invaded her body, so she fell into a coma. He explained concisely, and Chu Tianqing's face immediately became solemn. He ordered the black-robed guard at the door, go and invite the Grand Elder over. Then, Chu Tianqing walked to the side of the ice jade bed and stretched out his right hand's index and middle fingers. 5-colored Jin Yuan light lit up, and he pressed it on Yunyao's wrist to check her injuries. After 100 breaths of time, he found out about Yunyao's injuries and frowned. The demon Qi has invaded her body and eroded her internal organs and core. Even her knowledge sea and soul have been invaded. Her situation is very critical. At this time, Long Yunxiao also rushed into the secret room. He looked at Chu Tianqing expectantly and asked anxiously, Sect Master Chu, is there a way to save Yunyao? When Chu Tianqing saw Long Yunxiao's miserable appearance, he could already guess what kind of danger the three of them had encountered in Flame Spirit City. Seeing that Long Yunxiao's heart was burning with worry, he comforted him in a low voice, Son of Heaven, you don't have to panic. Go back to your residence and rest. After the Grand Supreme Elder and I examine her, we will do our best to help Yunyao expel the demonic energy. When Long Yunxiao heard Chu Tianqing's reply, he guessed that Chu Tianqing wasn't completely confident either. He became even more worried. Sect leader Chu, Yao Yao's heavenly spirit sacred body bloodline is extremely pure and noble. She must not be tainted by demonic qi. No matter what, sect leader Chu, please do your best to save her. If there are any difficulties or needs, I will think of a way. Chu Tianqing nodded and said in a deep voice, then, I'll thank you on behalf of Yunyao, Son of Heaven. Emperor, please go back and rest. Leave this place to me and the Grand Elder. After all, Long Yunxiao was a guest. It was not convenient for him to stay in the secret room. Although he was at the Sky Origin stage, he couldn't help Yunyao get rid of the devil Qi. Therefore, he could only say a few words to Chu Tiansheng and leave the secret room. When Chu Tiansheng saw that Ji Tianqing's injuries were not light and that he was very weak, he asked him to leave the secret room and go back to recuperate. Ji Tianqing staying in the secret room was of no help to Yunyao's injuries. He could only return to the Tianqing courtyard to recuperate and restore his strength. Not long after, Xiang Wuji hurried to the secret room. He was the strongest person in the sky-bearing sect and was proficient in alchemy and medicine. After entering the secret room, he asked with a solemn expression, "Chu Tiansheng, what's going on?" Chu Tiansheng hurriedly told him what Ji Tianqing had said. After listening, Xiang Wuji nodded with a gloomy expression and hurriedly walked to Yunyao's side. He waved his hand and released a stream of vital essence to check her condition. After a while, he withdrew his 5-colored vital essence and said in a heavy tone, "Yunyao's injuries are too serious. If we can't get rid of the devil Qi in her body as soon as possible, there will only be 2 results. Either she will be infected by the devil Qi, lose her consciousness and wisdom, and become a bloodthirsty demon. Or she won't be able to resist the devil Qi, and her body will rot into ashes and die." Chu Tiansheng narrowed his eyes and asked in a low voice, "Uncle Master, is it that serious?" "Of course." Xiang Wuji nodded and said angrily, "Even I am afraid of the Blood Demon King's methods, let alone these juniors." Chu Tiansheng asked again, "Uncle Master, is there any way to get rid of the devil Qi in Yunyao's body?" Xiang Wuji shook his head. "There is no way for the time being. We can only try our best. Moreover, Yunyao is not only infected by the devil Qi, but there is also a large amount of ghost Qi in her body." Chu Tiansheng was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly explained, according to Tianqing, they met the Blood Demon King in Flame Spirit City. The Blood Demon King had a helper, an old woman who was no weaker than him. Xiang Wuji frowned and thought for a moment. His expression changed immediately, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Could it be Grandma Ghost? With Tianzi, Yunyao, and Tianqing's strength, it is already a miracle that they can come back alive after meeting the Blood Demon King and Grandma Ghost. Many years ago, Xiang Wuji had fought with the Blood Demon King and Grandma Ghost. He knew how powerful they were. He frowned and said in a low voice, "Tianzi is too stubborn and self-opinionated this time. He actually brought Tianqing and Yunyao to Spirit Flame City and tried to get rid of the Blood Demon King. If the Blood Demon King was so easy to deal with, our sect would not have let him live until today." Sigh. Tianzi was born in Zhongzhou and is the son of the emperor. He is known as the #1 genius of the human race and has reached the divine origin stage at such a young age. It is inevitable that he is arrogant and looks down on everyone. It is a pity that he does not know the details and methods of the demon race. He underestimated the enemy and caused Yunyao to suffer such a calamity. Hearing this, Chu Tiansheng quickly interrupted him. "Uncle Master, it is not good for us to criticize Tianzi behind his back." Xiang Wuji glared at him and said in a low voice, "What is not good about it? Could it be that he can hear us? In the end, this is all your fault. When the 3 of them wanted to go to Spirit Flame City, why did you not stop them?" Chu Tiansheng frowned and said with a bitter smile, "Tianzi's identity is special. He insisted on going to Spirit Flame City. How could I stop him?" Of course, Xiang Wuji understood this. He could not help but mumble, "Fortunately, he is fine. If anything happened to him, how would our sect explain it to the imperial court?" Chu Tiansheng was silent for a moment. Then, he said, "Uncle Master, let's not talk about this for now. Let's try and see if we can help Yunyao get rid of the demon Qi." "Okay." Xiang Wuji replied and walked to the side of the ice jade bed. He raised his palms and activated the 5-color true essence. He waved his palms and made a mysterious hand gesture. He used a secret technique and sent his true essence into Yunyao's body. Chu Tiansheng helped from the side. He also released a vast amount of true essence into Yunyao's body to suppress the demon qi. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.